We'll call the meeting to order and open with the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance in the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first, thanks to everybody for coming to our hearing tonight. We have a large crowd, so we ask for your patience as we get through this long agenda. If you are addressing the commission at any point during the hearing, ask that you step forward and give your name and address. And just as a matter of procedure, a number of you have provided speaker request forms, which we appreciate. Before you address the commission, you need to be sworn in. I'll call off like 5 at a time, swear you in as a group, and then you can come up individually and make your comments. Roll call, please.
Rick Boggs.
Here.
Justin Epperson.
Here.
Robert Begarow.
Here.
Darren McGowan.
Here.
Randall Ripley.
Here.
Ann Rogers. Here. Jerry Truex.
Here.
All right, thank you. And again, just procedure-wise, if you're not familiar with how we run the meetings, we typically, for each of the applications, call upon the city staff to do a presentation to summarize what the application is about. Then the commission members, they ask questions. Then we go to the applicant interaction, same thing, the commission members can ask questions. And then at that point, we ask for public comment. So I'll try to keep you aware of what's going on as we go. And again, because of the number of folks that have turned out to the commission members, I'm going to suggest that we reorder the agenda tonight and start with this is in the new business section. What I propose that we do is start with item F, which is the TCOD, and then go to item E, Sage Point Development, and then follow the rest of the agenda fairly closely. We'll put the unsafe structures discussion at the end. Anybody have any questions about this evening? Any concerns? Okay, I'll make that formal and move that we adjust the agenda as I described.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jerry. Any discussion on the motions to change the sequence of the new business section? Roll call, please.
Ms. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. McGowan.
Yes.
Mr. Epperson.
Yes.
Mr. Begarow.
Yes.
Mr. Boggs.
Yes.
Mr. Ripley.
Yes.
Mr. Truex.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. So, that's the old business. I guess let's skip to that. Still remains on the table.
Yes, correct.
No change there. So new business, we'll start with the Transportation Corridor Overlay District application TCOD 1901. This is for the property on Watkins Road, east of Watkins Road. Just as a reminder, this property is currently zoned RM for multifamily residential. I know there's concerns about apartments there. That's not, it's already approved. That's not up for discussion tonight. Tonight's discussion, the Transportation Corridor Overlay District, is about access, mostly, traffic concerns, that sort of things. So, staff report.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Like I said, this is TCOD-19-001. The applicant is Jason Heitmeyer. Location, it's an unimproved property off of Watkins Road Southwest. Current acreage is 6.88. The current zoning is RM for multifamily residential. Request is approval of a transportation corridor overlay district pursuant to section 125907A of the Pasco Code for a 42-unit apartment complex. If you look here, you can see the area map. To the south, we have Broad Street, Watkins Road Southwest running north to south here with the property wrapping around to the top with these three houses in the middle. Jefferson Meadows apartment complex is property itself, as I said, it's 6.88 acres overall. The applicant is pursuing a variance currently to allow for a lot split. The proposed north lot would become 2.416 acres. The proposed south lot would become 4.285. So that variance was actually tabled at last month's Board of Zoning Appeals hearing and will be heard at the following meeting in March 11th. Development is proposed only on the south lot, and the south lot currently has a frontage of 200 feet on the Watkins Road. As for the proposal itself, it's within a quarter-mile of East Broad Street, and as per the PCOD regulations, an approved permit is required per section 125903. Once approved, the applicant may begin the permitting process for the buildings. However, should that variance not be approved, the applicant will have to revise his plans to include the entirety of the property. So the applicant has entitled this project Bryn Mawr Crossing. Total acreage is 4.4, pending that approval of a variance for the lot split. Total units is 42 at a density of 10 units per acre, and they have an open space of 0.36 acres. So here's a look at the overall site layout. You can see here the access off of Watkins Road, coming back through the access drive with 4 8-unit buildings here, 2 4-unit buildings here in the rear, and 1 2-unit building here in the north. Building types, there's going to be 4 of the 8 units at 6,605 square feet per building, 2 of the 4 units at 3,300 square feet per building, and just 1 2-unit at 1,660 square feet per building. Here's a look at the elevations of the proposed buildings the applicant sent us. These are looking at the materials, combination of different colored vinyl sidings and stone. Just a quick general summary. So the setbacks for the RM district are 75 feet from Watkins Road. Code requires 50 feet. In this case, side is 15 feet as per section 1239.05, and the rear is 25 feet as per section 1239.05. Access is to be 1 2-way access road on the Watkins Road Southwest, directly opposite of Windridge Drive, and approximately 780 feet north of the Watkins Road East Broad Street intersection. 1 right-in deceleration turn-in lane is being provided, and an 8-foot wide asphalt path along the frontage is proposed. Look here, a closer look at the access point off Watkins. We can see the right-in deceleration lane coming in here, and the 2-way access road coming into the proposed development. As for the unit types, there is a combination of 2 and 3 bedrooms. 2 bedrooms at 1,285 square feet. Section 1239.05D1 of the code requires 1,100 square feet minimum, and the 3 bedrooms come in to 1,412 square feet, and code requires a minimum of 1,300 square feet for those. Just a quick look at the layouts of the units that the development included, or the applicant included with their development proposal. As for parking, 1 car garage and 1 driveway space provided per unit, in addition to 18 visitor spaces for a total of 102. So section 1291.162 of the code requires a minimum of 84 parking spaces for the development type. So they've exceeded that. Lighting is to be 1 porch light and 1 garage coach light per unit. Signage, they proposed 1 sign, 32 square feet in size, mounted on an L-shaped stone base. Colors are to be turquoise, white, black, externally illuminated, and it will be north of the entrance drive, 10 feet outside of our right-of-way. Look here at the proposed sign. On the right here, you can see the location highlighted in red, just north of the access drive here, with some additional landscaping on the frontage. So for the landscaping plan that was submitted, 45 trees are proposed to be removed, with 98 trees being replaced. They'd like to utilize the existing vegetation to the north as screening. As for other types of screening, L2, which is a 3-foot high screen with 1 tree for every 30 feet, is to be provided along the frontage on Watkins Road. We have here just a quick look at the proposed landscaping. The replacement trees are going here in these little islands in between the driveways and the garages. Looking up here on the rear side of the development, screening along what are the existing single-family homes here, with some additional replacement trees in the back. L3 type L3 type landscape screening, which is a 6-foot-high continuous shrub screen with 1 tree for every 30 feet, is to be placed along the south property line and the east property line where the development area borders Jefferson Meadows. And L4 type, which is a 6-foot-high wall or fence and 1 tree for every 30 feet, in addition to 4 high shrubs per every 30 feet along the areas where the development borders the existing single-family homes. So we provided this little color-coded layout here for what types of screening are going where. L2 highlighted in green along the frontage, L3 highlighted in yellow along the south border where it borders the existing Jefferson Meadows condo complex, and L4 along the north part here where it borders the existing single-family homes, and just a bit here on the south. And they'd like to use the existing vegetation present here to screen from the north. So pursuant to section 1259.05B for the Transportation Corridor Overlay District, the Planning and Zoning Commission has the ability to waive certain requirements, those being setbacks and landscaping and screening standards if an alternative plan is provided. The applicant didn't request any waivers with the submission. And as part of our review, we've drafted some comments for you. The future land use map designates the property as high-density residential with an open space corridor along the frontage. So the applicant's proposed development is not in line with the comprehensive plan. The high-density residential, as stated in the comprehensive plan, is for single-family residential uses. However, the property is currently zoned RM multifamily residential, in which apartments are permitted use. So we met with the applicant a few times prior to them officially submitting for the public hearing, and we provided feedback on those concept plans along with, so that list of comments is attached to your staff report, including updated responses. There were a few things that were not addressed with the most recent submitted plans, those being section 1239.05B, proposed lot split requires variance. Should that be denied, the applicant will have to resubmit with revised plans that include the entirety of the development area. Number 2, 1239.05 Part J, the proposed dumpster location was identified, however, details of the height and type of screening are not included. 1239.05M, enough open space is provided, however, per this section, they had to provide at least 8 pieces of heavy-duty recreation equipment. The types of that and locations were not indicated on the site plans. 1259.05E, it appears all the new utilities will be underground, however, we would just like to see a note on these plans stating that all the utilities will be placed underground. And 1259.05F requires an 8-foot wide asphalt path along the frontage or for the developer to pay into a fee in lieu. So the developer provided the path, however, since there aren't any existing paths on the adjoining parcels or on the other side of the street, we feel a fee in lieu in this case would be more appropriate. Just an example, as you can see, there aren't any adjoining paths here on the parcels to the north or the south or on the adjacent side of the street here. 1259.05G, the applicant will need to request a waiver from the landscaping requirements of section 1259 to allow for the existing vegetation to be used as screening to the north. However, as stated before, the planning and zoning may approve this pursuant to 1259.05G2. And then 1259.09B9, the proposed sign exceeds the maximum height by 6 inches. The maximum height is 6 feet, and the applicant's proposed sign height was 6 feet 6 inches. So in addition to those comments that were unresolved from the concept plan, we do have some additional comments following this most recent submittal. We'd like for the applicant to indicate the zoning of the property on the site data table. And also the site data table lists an acreage of 4.4. However, the survey that was submitted for the variance that's before the Board of Zoning Appeals is only for 4.285 acres. So staff would like some clarification on that. And 3, again, staff would like some clarification on the tree replacement plan. For the 45 trees that are being removed, 98 are proposed as replacements, which would be correct for the caliper and ratio requirements of the landscaping section. However, those are only if they're being replaced with trees from the native tree table in section 1283.03-2. However, on the plant schedule that was submitted, it lists 11 species, only 5 of which are listed in the table. And the total of these 5 is only 53 trees. So other species of trees not listed in the table are being counted towards those replacements. They would have to be counted at a different ratio, which would therefore increase the number of trees required for replacement. So staff would like some clarification on this as well. We sent this out for a routing memo to different city agencies and departments. The city engineer had a few comments. First, just the only one being the applicant lists 44 units on the application, whereas the building data provided lists 42 units. And the full comments are attached there to your staff report. The Public Service Director also had some additional comments. The construction plans are to be reviewed on submission. Two is believe that the inclusion of a right turn deceleration lane as shown with the details to be determined during the engineering review will satisfy the requirements of section 1259-05A3, and his full comments are also attached. From the utility director, he will require an 8-inch main run through the development and connect to the 10-inch main on the west side of Watkins Road and to the 8-inch fire line that is stubbed at the end of Richmond Drive in Jefferson Meadows. Two, will require each building to have one path for water and sewer and 1 meter for billing purposes. However, he did say that sub-metering can be provided privately, and his full comments are also attached. As for surrounding properties, to the north, we have zoning, actually old zoning, and to the north is in Harrison Township. However, their zoning districts are agriculture and B1 for business district. Current land uses is a dog kennel. To the east, we have multifamily residential, and it's currently condominiums, the Jefferson Meadows apartment complex. The south is general business, however, all of that land is currently vacant. And to the west, we have more Harrison Township, zoned agricultural, used for single-family homes, and Pataskala being R7 village single-family residential, also used for single-family homes. Included this little graphic here to show what the surrounding zoning is. You can see the proposed properties here. To the east, we have it zoned for multifamily residential. South is business but currently vacant, and to the east we have the R7. And all the stuff not shaded in is what is currently Harrison Township. As part of this, the Planning and Zoning Commission could choose to approve the applicant's request. We've supplied the following modifications that may be considered for that. First one being the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the city of Pataskala and the Licking County Building Department prior to construction. Two, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall address all, I should say the applicant shall address all comments from the Planning and Zoning staff, city engineer, public service director, and Pataskala Utilities Department. Three, the applicant shall submit a complete set of construction plans, including stormwater calculations for review and approval by the city engineer and the public service director. And four, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall waive the screening requirements for the north property line. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Jack. Commission members, any questions? We'll start with Darren.
Do we know what the holdup was with the appeals?
With the variance?
Appeal board?
It was, excuse me, it was tabled for, the board had a multitude of questions. There were some questions about access for the northern property due to its location and the unique situation where it's near Harrison Township and City Pataskala, so there was questions about that. There was questions about where the minimum, because right now they're proposing if the lot split will be 60 feet wide, the code requires 90. There's questions as to why 90 is the magic number. There was also questions about buildable area. I'm trying to think, is that
Fire access.
and fire access. So there was a couple of questions that they had pertaining to that.
That's all.
Yeah, thanks. Justin?
Some future land use was high density residential, single family. Was that from the new future use or was that from the older one?
That was from the older one adopted in 2006.
And when was it zoned?
From what I understand from doing our research on this, the Jefferson Meadow condominium complex was originally supposed to move west to utilize the entire multifamily zoning. The recession happened, so they stopped. Then I think a couple years ago, there was units that went south along the fire access to Broad, but they decided not to finish off the rest to the west, which is the property we're looking at now. So from my understanding, that would have been about 2005.
Good, thanks. Sure.
Is there any adjoining walkways from any of these surrounding the Jefferson Meadows or anything that's going to connect in terms of connecting the communities or the?
For the asphalt path?
Yes, for the asphalt paths. I
No.
understand out on Watkins Road because of the the kennels and that are through there, but is there any other adjoining walkways that can be met to kind of divert walking down the Watkins Road?
I believe so.
No, I don't believe so, and then, Jefferson Meadows is private, so there's streets and all the internal infrastructure is private, so to have a walking path to go into Jefferson Meadow wouldn't be appropriate since it's all private infrastructure. There's no paths existing that there could be any connection made.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, thanks. I understand there was some concern about the public notifications, just, also understand that the city had mailed those out February 22nd, is that
That's correct.
And actually that applies to all the, as far as we know, all the items on the agenda tonight, but the city actually did mail notices on the 22nd, so it's been out there for a while. We don't know what happened, if they just were delivered this week, but, I wanted to point that out. That's all I had at this time. Rob?
As far as the variance with the other committee, so if they don't get that variance, just for clarification, they basically have to start over again with their plan. I mean, they've got to include all that other area.
Not necessarily. They could essentially propose the same thing. It's just that when we look at the site plans, that it has to show the entire area, including that wraparound part to the north.
Okay, so it would stop anything if we were to move forward from here. That would render basically, if we were to vote on it today, made null and void. If they don't have the,
That's correct. They could, if the board makes a decision to approve it, then, they would just need to revise their plans dependent upon how the variance turns out to show the entirety of the property as part of the proposed development instead of just that lower portion.
thanks.
Rip? Okay.
I don't have anything right now.
Thanks. Yeah?
As far as discussing the elevation, the elevation seems, would it be higher or similar to the elevation of the existing properties?
As opposed to Jefferson Meadows or the surrounding properties for the houses.
Well, probably Jefferson Meadows is the closest, correct, but
No, the single families are.
single families are.
Yeah, the single-family homes in Harrison Township, I'm not sure if those are 1 or 2 stories. I know Jefferson Meadows is single-story, and I know there's 2-story homes in Barrington Ridge, and as proposed, these would be 2-story.
Okay. Is the parking based on, what does that calculate? How do they calculate how much parking is needed? Is that based on head count?
So per the code, for multifamily uses, it's just 2 per unit.
2 adults per unit, 2 cars per unit.
Yeah, just 2 parking spaces per unit.
And we can potentially require only 2 adults or allow per unit, per 1 bedroom, or 2 bedroom?
No, I don't think legally we can restrict if it's a 3-bedroom and 3 adults wanna move in, I don't think the city has the ability to restrict that, to say only 2 adults could live there.
I think we can. We need to check into it. I read the Ohio Fair Housing laws, and it says that we can restrict how many people live in an apartment. However, we cannot restrict how many children. So I wanted to make sure we discuss that, ask the developer, because if we allow 4 adults per 2-bedroom, then we're having 4 cars potentially, which means the parking lot's not gonna work. So we need to kind of clarify that. I think that's all for now. I'm sure I'll have more questions.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions for the staff at this point? If not, we'll go to the applicant, I believe it's Jason Heitmeyer. Okay, first, more than one of you, okay. Do you swear that any testimony will give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer to God? Okay, thanks. Now, if you would start with your name and address, please.
Jason Heitmeyer, Heitmeyer Building and Design, and I live at 7010 Deer Run Road, Pickerington, Ohio. Yeah, pretty much exactly as everything's been laid out and presented tonight. There are just a few things to add. I'm a local builder. I'm actually out of Pickerington. I've been in the building industry and building beautiful properties for almost 25 years. So my intentions with this property is to create a beautiful apartment complex. And if anybody knows my reputation in town, they'll know that I'm going to deliver a beautiful project and something that not only I can be proud of, but neighboring residents and the community can certainly be proud of as well. A lot of care and thought goes into what we do, and that's what we're here to provide and meet a need. Kind of the lot split, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. I'm actually in contract, subject to the lot split occurring, to sell that parcel to a neighboring property owner that adjoins it. So that way, they wanted to be able to protect that and have that for themselves. So for what that's worth. Really, that's what I have. So, any questions?
Okay. Thanks. Stand by. And go to commission members for questions. Justin?
What's the estimated rent for one of the units?
About $1,400 a month.
And I know that in some of our preparation material that we got, the residents had concerns about being told it was high end, but what are some guarantees or some proof that these will be high end?
My word.
Can you elaborate?
That's what I do. And I think when you see what I proposed on the with the elevations and the stone detail and the elevations, I'm not here to create a low level section A, anything that might be construed as negative. And if you see what I built in the past, I've always had the reputation of people saying, I build expensive homes, and so this will be no different.
Have you done a project like this before?
Not an apartment complex. I've done single-family condominiums.
Do you have like a project that's roughly comparable quality-wise that,
Not
we could research?
not in a multifamily apartment complex. No. Sure.
Where are some of the projects that you've done already that, maybe that are around that we maybe drove by or have seen?
Probably well, Pickerington is my home, and it's kind of the bread and butter of where I've been building for years. And there was a community called Winding Creek. It's off of Milner Road, and if you're ever familiar with that, it's a single-family residential development, high-end homes. There's a condominium parcel within that planned development project, and we built those in there. And again, they're all nice properties.
That's on Milner?
Yeah, Milner.
What's that in between? Which is it
It's in
between
between Route
204, between
204 and
Refugee or where?
Yeah, it's on the west side of Milner. Yeah, that'd probably be the largest thing closest to be able to pick up on.
Okay. The modifications that you saw up on the board, did you have any issues with the modifications that were brought forth by the staff?
No, they were all, you have to go through them individually to address each individual one, but as a whole, none of them were insurmountable or I had anything against or even like with the trees, talking about, that just comes to my mind. It's just a matter of identifying the tree species to match what's on the native list in order to comply with that versus whatever the plant engineer had placed in there inadvertently or mistakenly or not realizing that that wasn't considered part of the native species approved. So that's an example of just going through and just, readjusting that per staff, what we need to do to meet their requirement as needed.
In terms of, it's already been brought up about parking and, vacancy, or, how much vacancy goes into these apartments. What's the plan if there are more than 2 cars in is there any restrictions or anything that you have in terms of where will those cars go?
Well, we have additional parking spaces for within the confines of the project identified, and it would just be a matter of 18 and it'd be a matter of 18 extra spaces, it'd be a matter of them identifying one of those departments.
18 extra spaces,
Yeah.
but how many units?
42.
Okay.
You took care of the one I had about the modifications, so. Rob.
You hit them all.
Okay, thanks. Rip?
Not right now.
Yeah?
I believe, just for the record, I believe of the 42 units, 17 of them are 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
Okay, so are you planning for restrictions, or I don't know if that's our jurisdiction, theirs, to restrict the number of adults per unit?
I have not, that has not crossed my consideration at this point.
And then the $1,400 rate, is that for a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom?
It'll be a 3-bedroom.
That would be for a 3-bedroom?
Yeah. So about 1,300 for a 2-bedroom, 1,400 for a 3-bedroom.
Okay.
And
May I
that's
share an
approximate.
experience?
I'm sorry?
May I share a personal
Sure,
experience?
yeah.
I think might be helpful, I'm not sure, but, your properties are, duplex, correct? They share a
Duplex,
wall.
quad, as well as, 8-plex, yeah.
Do you have any 2-story where you have families above?
No,
None of that?
no.
And then, my story is a little bit different. My son, and he gave me permission to share this, but he was diagnosed with cancer. He and his wife lived in a high-end apartment in Dublin, $2,300 a month for a 2-bedroom. They were on the 2nd floor, and when they moved in, there was one woman above them, and she had a 2-bedroom. When she moved out, 4 adults moved in above her, and they were not related. 2 of them were, I take that back, there was a married couple and then 2 other adults, and that were not related, but it's permissible. So they kept them up at all hours of the night, didn't care that he was suffering, didn't care that radiation was keeping him from sleeping. They literally did not care. Noise ordinance, it didn't faze them. Call the cops, you have to prove. It's ridiculous. They ended up just recently moving, so, before their time was up, but I say that to say we need to make sure that we only allow so many adults per unit. That's the only way to keep from having too many people, more traffic than expected, more wear and tear, that kind of thing. So, something we need to really address, I think. I think that's all I'm gonna say for now. Don't know if you have any comments on that. Side by side, I mean, obviously, when you have people living above you is different than side by side, but if your walls are thin, what difference does it make?
Well, and I'm sorry to hear of your son, I hopefully he's
By the
doing-
way,
is he recovering, doing better, or is it?
he's improving.
Good, good to hear that. To answer your other question, I mean, yeah, they are townhomes, so, the 2nd story portion of it would be, the same unit, it'd be just the upstairs of the, where the appreciate the thought and suggestion and comments. It's quite frankly something I just, again, hasn't crossed, my consideration or, so it's hard for me to, I don't know what that looks like or entails or whatever, but I certainly will take that into consideration strongly, absolutely.
Well, thank you. The other issue they had was pets. They did allow pets there, but people would throw their dog doo-doo bags in the bed of his truck and let him. Now,
Yeah.
honestly, this is high-end gated,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to be able to filter.
It's
A
yeah,
little
it's
bit.
unfortunate how some people are told disregard for other people's personal space and the well-being of the area around you, and
Right.
it's sad.
And you can't
Environment.
control, you can't even guess what kind of people. They might look like decent people,
Yeah.
and then you get them in there. But I didn't know if you were going to be allowing pets.
There will be pets allowed, yeah, but one of the things, with, that, we're striving to create a kind of a community feel within the small little community, obviously, 42-unit community, and, through, some, talking about the eight, I believe it's 8 areas of, can't think of the proper name of it, but kind of like where we're talking about park benches and, or recreation, heavy recreational items, one of which, we want to include is, like grilling stations and, areas where then the residents, hopefully come together and are able to converse together and use, common grill areas and picnic table areas, so that way they can actually, have an enjoyable evening, and get to know the neighbors and create a good community feel. So, and hopefully that in turn goes a long way with respecting their neighbors and cleaning up dog doo and, with dog stations that, you can pull some wipes down and, that can be re-fed with, the management company putting trash bags back into the dog station. So,
Would you have security cameras?
I would expect, people have to, you would want that.
That's all I have for now.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Just to kind of direct your question to the staff on your comment about fair housing, have you provided that reference to Scott or Jack?
It's on the, Ohio website, Ohio Fair Housing Laws. It's very easy.
I mean, that's not part of the transportation corridor section of the code, but it's something that you might want to check into, just for general reasons.
Okay.
Thanks. Aaron?
Thank you for your comment, Ken, appreciate it.
I had one question on the parking. There's 2 spots per unit. Is one in the garage?
Yes.
So
One
spots.
Okay, thanks. Any other follow-up questions for the applicant at this point?
I guess the only thing with the one being in the garage is there are gonna be restrictions that the garage does need to be able to house a car and not just, people's storage. To make sure that, again, because if you do have 2 cars, then we've seen that happen quite a bit. And I mean, again, just to kind of follow along with Ann, there's a part that I like limiting, but then there's also a part that what happens if somebody's parent, one parent passes away and they wanna move another parent into their house. I think there has to be some thought to making sure that, if someone wants to move their mother or father in with them, it becomes 3 in a household, that we are being open to what's happening there. I understand non-relatives, that might be a thing, but I think just make sure that we are sympathetic towards, the baby boomers and their parents. Other than that, just make sure the parking would not become an
I
issue.
think we can handle that through our individual leases and disagreements with the tenants to help control that, help them reserve those garages for their intended use.
I'm not sure. The Ohio Fair Housing Law is pretty, it's complicated if you don't restrict specifically. then you have to allow generally. So my friend could be considered a family member. So it's really kind of weird. From my understanding, I'm no lawyer, but from what I read, it's very complicated. So we need to make sure we get it straight the first time. Don't think if you allow one direction, it's all or nothing. So,
Like I said, that's a slippery slope because.
I mean, I'm sympathetic to, of course, to people that have parents and that kind of thing. But slippery slope.
Thank you.
And this is Scott Sands, he's my engineer, in case they have any other questions on the site as well.
Any questions for?
Quick question on the dumpster location. It seems like a little tricky spot for the trash truck to get out of there. Because you're sliding in next to a building and you gotta back up, turn, and then back into another spot to get out. So I'm assuming it's a forward facing dump.
Yes. Their name for the record.
Sorry, my name's Scott Sands with Sands Decker, 1495 Old Henderson Road, Columbus. We analyze the turning movements on the site for both trash vehicles, fire engines, those kind of things, using software called AutoTurn. And so we've run that with AutoTurn to make sure that a truck of that size will be able to get in there and
I'm sure he can.
pick it up.
He's gonna be right next to a two-story building. He's gotta back up along where cars are gonna go in and out.
Yeah, there's
We
parking
can't see.
along that south.
You notice he's gotta back up, he's
East
gotta
side.
go to the left a little bit, and then to the right, back in front of unit, or building 5. And then get out.
Well, we can certainly look at that with staff and see if there's a better way to configure that dumpster location that might be a little easier. Certainly open to
You know, where
look at
people
it.
drive.
You're right, it almost has to back all the way adjacent to building 5 to get
It's
back
got
out of
to.
there.
Right.
Any other questions for the engineer?
Did you want to share what your interior would look like as well for the?
The interior, I mean, be mostly hard surfaces like hardwood flooring on the main level. Probably carpet on the bedrooms upstairs. The bathrooms tile, granite countertops. Nice high-end cabinetry, not apartment grade, crappy cabinets. Some sort of probably like a Pella integrity window, be a vinyl window, but still most likely a Pella brand. Some of the particular items have not been identified just yet, but those are the direction we're looking at.
Thanks. Just again, this is a TCOD application, and so access, traffic access, parking, landscape buffering, those are the issues that we're to be looking at tonight as we evaluate this. Okay, one of the things that you can step aside there for a moment if you want. We'll go to public comment. I know we have a number of speaker request forms here. Usually, whenever we have such a large crowd and a number of requests, we'll ask folks to limit their comments to a specific time period, and I would suggest 3 minutes. I will ask the commission members if that seems appropriate. Okay, so we will ask for the members of the public to limit your individual comments to 3 minutes. And one way to do this, I know probably a lot of you have the same opinions, so it's best if you not just repeat everything that the person ahead of you or the people ahead of you said. You can say, I agree with them, and that'll save you a lot of your time. So procedurally, I'll run through these, I'll call 5 names off and swear you in as a group, and then individually you can come up and make your comments to the group. So, Gina Latimer, Gary Sunderman, Terry Allen, Nancy Arledge, and Deb Bootman. If you would stand, I'll swear you in. You don't need to come forward at this point, but, I mean, you can, one of you will have to anyway.
I just want to
Okay.
say, my comments are not for this issue. Mine were for
Okay. Who are you again? I'm sorry?
Terry Allen.
Okay. Sorry, got in the wrong stack. Okay, I'll add Barbara Weiss, or Weiss. So, do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Gina, you step forward. And our timer will be here. You want to wave whenever the 3 minutes?
Mm-hmm. It will be.
Oh, okay.
Hi, thanks for listening. I'm here for 2 reasons, as a resident as well as a realtor. My resident concerns would be overcrowding of the school systems. As you all know, there's quite a bit, obviously, of building going on, and very concerned about how that's gonna be handled, for the children. Also, as a resident, very concerned with traffic, concern on Watkins Road, as we all know. As a realtor, my concerns are hugely on parking. That's one of the things that, when you come into, those types of, multifamilies, having enough space for not only the people that live there, but for, their visitors as well. You know, they're going to have visitors, and if you have a lot of people there for visiting for a birthday party or a, significant situation that they want to have other guests come, I'm concerned about the parking situation. Also, what would be great as a alternative to think about, loving the idea of, you know, again, as a realtor, more housing. However, it would be great to have more housing for seniors. We currently really do not have a huge amount of seniors. There's a lot of seniors in the city that want to stay in the city, but they don't have the availability to stay in the city because of the lack of senior housing. Also, I would like to say, lighting for safety. I don't know if that was brought up, I can't remember, that was one of the things, is lighting for the apartment complex. Making sure that if they're going to have the paths, it's very critical to see how are they gonna do that, because you certainly have the runway with the traffic coming in off Watkins, but how are the sidewalks going to be handled? And, that's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you. Next, Gary Sunderman.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Gary Sunderman. I live at 652 Monticello Court in Jefferson Meadow condominiums. And while I'm not going to be a next door neighbor of this development, I do have some concerns, mainly with the density, even though it's zone property, and I know you said basically don't waste your breath to talk about apartments, but as Gina mentioned, seniors need places to live in this area. The Jefferson Meadow condos, I know that land was originally purchased for condos, and I just have the feeling that now we got leftovers, and out of greed, we're just gonna stick as much as we can in and get out. We don't care what happens afterward. Well, you're gonna have kids living there, and we're supposed to be a recreation area. I don't see any on the plan. I don't see any equipment, and my guess is it'll probably end up to be a few park benches, and I call that recreational equipment. So kids are gonna be out there getting off from school. Probably both their parents are gonna be working. There's nothing for them to do, no place to go because they can't go anywhere. So what do? They get in mischief and start infiltrating the neighborhoods around them. That's one thing. And then the cars that are gonna be parked outside, we've already had a lot of break-ins, so that's gonna be another problem. If you would, I wanna give somebody something to look at, and it's the lot, and it's with condos that are 2-unit condos, as they have over in the village, in back of Kroger there. And these would fit, they're only, my estimate is about 16, 8 units of 2 each. But it would have 2-car garages, so there'd be plenty of room to park, plus the driveway. And there would be trash pickup if it was hooked into the Jefferson Meadow condos. It wouldn't need to be a road going over there, just a walking path. And that could be hooked in, and they could provide, the condos already have restrictions on how many, on the inhabitants in, per bedroom. There's parking restrictions already in place. There's trash pickup already in place, lawn care. This could all be incorporated. And it, for the developer, it may not be the big profit that they're gonna get off these apartments, but it's ownership. And you look at the surrounding areas, that square block that showed what's around this area. It's ownership. It's ownership of homes, it's ownership of, a business, it's ownership of condos, and it's ownership of farmland. Now you're gonna bring in a bunch of renters, and they're gonna be in and out. I don't know what kind of maintenance is gonna be on the property, but it's not gonna be, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
If you would, yeah, thank you for coming.
Now, could I leave this with somebody?
I would give that to Lisa. She will take care of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your comments.
Nancy Arledge?
Good evening. I'm Nancy Arledge. I live at 459 Middle Ground Road, Southwest. I own the stable at the end of Middle Ground Road. I love everything that man had to say. I would like to know why apartments and not continuing on with the condos, and again, the ownership issue. Having temporary residents such as apartment dwellers does not give us that have lived there 27 plus years any type of feeling of security, nor does something like an apartment complex versus a condo complex or a senior citizen center give us any type of benefit to our property values. I would also question, has the traffic study been done? What it's going to impact our roads? And also, how about another entrance? How is fire and police protection going to be able to come in just one entrance? How are you gonna get a fire truck to the far end if the dumpster is gonna have an issue? I'm disappointed to hear that this property was zoned back in 2005 and we can't do anything about it now that an apartment complex is basically designed. And had we all known, maybe we could have said something earlier about condos being put there. Ownership gives you pride. Temporary renters will not have pride, and they will cause issues in our neighborhoods. And me being in Harrison Township without Patasko protection, not that Harrison wouldn't protect us, but the sheriff takes a long time to come from Newark when we need them. So, and I've lived here a very long time, and I'm very disappointed in this design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing our comments this evening. My name is Deb Gutman. I live at 5177 Watkins Road. Pataskala, and as you can tell, because I wear this 7 days a week, I own and operate Meegan Kennels. That's not just a boarding kennel, guys, my home is there, okay? So it is a residential property as well. I'm not gonna repeat everybody's comments here tonight. I, as well as the lady right before me, have some gut-wrenching concerns. Part of it is that this is pre-decided. I hope to the Lord that it's not, that you will listen to everyone who has comments to make tonight. High-end is not one-car garages, one driveway. I respect that this gentleman has probably built very nice communities in the past, but he's not built this type of community. He's not putting it in his backyard in Pickerington. He's putting it in our backyard in Pataskala. Okay? I may be in Harrison Township, but I shop at Kroger. I go to the doctor and dentist in town. I spend all of my money that I make up there on the hill in Pataskala, and I consider myself a resident of Pataskala. That's the community that I belong to. This proposal is not in sync with our community. Every house on Watkins Road is single family. 90 feet, there's a reason for 90 feet. I spent 30 years in single family development banking, okay? I do have some idea what I'm dealing with and talking about here. 90 feet says you've got enough room to put a house, a single house. You can't do that on 60 feet. Now, I happen to live in a very small house. It's still 55 feet long, so you can't put a house on 60 feet. So that regulation, whatever you want to call it, was designed to keep the community single family for all the reasons that people have mentioned tonight. This design is not in sync with the community. It will not benefit the community. We haven't heard from the schools. We haven't heard from the fire people. We haven't heard from the police. And all of those departments are going to be impacted significantly by an additional 80 to 120 people moving into the corner of Watkins and Broad. I would ask each and every one of you to drive down that road at 7 in the morning.
Yes.
And I know what it looks like as I walk out of my house, across my driveway to the kennel building every morning at 7. And I see from my driveway, which is a quarter mile north of Broad, the 4th driveway on the right, I see red lights on cars waiting for Broad to change. And now halfway through that lineup of traffic, we're gonna let more cars out, another 100 cars going out there. Please, drive it in the morning, think about it, and think about the impact that you're making to the people who live there today. And I respect people wanting to bring their mom and dad into their house if they need to, but all of us have built this community. We've lived there a long time, we've paid the taxes, we're trying to keep it the way it is. We're not trying to prevent development. Don't believe that that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain the community that's there today. And I would ask you to really seriously think about whether or not your approval of this project maintains the community today.
Thank you.
Barbara Bice?
Schools are not happy. The high school's too small as it is.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Weiss. I live third house from the corner of Broad and Watkins Road, right next to the kennel, 5419 Watkins Road. My major concern, number one, is how all this, Mr. Heitmeyer can build all his properties and then leave. Would he like this next to his house? Would you like this next to your houses? I'm concerned about property values. The house I live in was a rental. It was a mess. My daughter bought it, gutted the place, put at least $100,000 into high-end furnishings, appliances, roof, landscaping to make the house nice. Can you in your mind's eye see on that corner at least 88 people milling around, 88 cars, trying to come out one driveway onto Watkins Road amongst all the other people. I mean, Watkins Road, there's only one exit on Broad, one exit on Holland Road. There isn't any other way to get off of Watkins Road. And it's simply a concern. It just doesn't make any sense. With Google building their big facility adjacent to Morse Road, there's going to be a need for probably nice high-end housing. Isn't there any way that field can be redesigned to single-family homes in there instead? It would add to our area, which is very nice and very calm, and certainly wouldn't be served with the in and out traffic of all these transient people in and out of these apartments. I wish you could give that some thought. It's simply going to ruin the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next group, Scott Sands, Eric Bonner. Again, I apologize for if I mispronounce your name, you can correct me. Candy Engel, Bob Janelle, and Ryan Young. So if you would all stand, and I'll swear you in now. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Say thank you. Scott Sands first.
I'm the engineer for the app.
Oh, okay, sorry. Eric.
How are you? Eric Bonner, 667 Ford Pass, Pasco, Ohio. I have a couple questions for you guys. I noticed nobody's answering any questions, but did the traffic study get done?
Traffic study was not required for this, and the TCOD requires there's like 5 options for traffic improvements, and it says they shall be done, so that's why the right turn lane shall be done. There was no requirement for a traffic study.
Right turn lane out of
Into going north on Watkins, a right deceleration lane dedicated to turn into the complex.
So is that deceleration lane on his property or the general business property?
It'll be in the right of way, in the
So-
public right of way.
Okay, so that's what? How far is the deceleration lane?
When the engineering plans, if approved, the engineering plans, they'll determine the appropriate length of the deceleration lane.
Okay. And so all the water that's coming down the ditch will go where?
As part of the engineering plans, then they'll look at the drainage, the length of the deceleration lane, all the drainage on site. This is just to approve the overall site plan, then they'll get to the nuts and bolts of how all that will work.
So can we as residents request the traffic studies done, seeing how there's 1 million cars already going through there with a major dip in the road?
If the planning commission wants a traffic study done, they can require a traffic study be conducted.
Okay. I'm requesting that a traffic study needs to be done there. As you guys well know, that entrance there. Somebody brought up the lighting issue. With the 3 single-family homes to the north of this property, I agree there needs to be lighting, but we also need to remember if you guys pass this thing through that any of that light is gonna probably be shed onto their property, which is currently dark at this moment. As soon as that goes in, it's gonna look like Coghlan Chevrolet right next to it. So, let's think about that. School bus issue. My assumption is they'll pick them up outside on Watkins, so there'll be a stop within 5 car lengths of the light. So people trying to make a left-hand turn to go north on Watkins is all of a sudden, there's probably gonna be even more accidents there because people aren't gonna realize that the school bus is stopping and people are gonna be stuck in the middle of the intersection trying to go through the light. So I think we need to think about that. Parking issue, we already talked about that, but we all know that we have parties. If more than one person in that development has a Super Bowl party, they're parking in the general business lot currently, because there's nowhere for them to be parking. And that dumpster won't ever get picked up if they're gonna park in front of that dumpster. So, he's gonna have to pull in there, back all the way up, and so do you want that guy trying to back out on Watkins? I also wanna know, you guys didn't really answer the requirement of the fire truck. Is a fire truck, if there's an accident at the entrance of that development, he can't get to the back, how does he get in there to save any one of your guys' life?
We'll address questions at the end.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Candy Angle?
Hi, my name is Candy Engel. My address is 177 Trail East, Etna, Ohio. I'm not a resident, but I am the board president for the Southwest Licking School District. So that is why I'm coming to see you. Obviously, the high density of this particular property is a significant concern to the district. I know when Ms. Rogers spoke earlier, her concern was the number of adults in the apartments. Our concern is the number of children in each apartment. And 2 and 3 bedroom homes could have a significant number of children in an apartment. And right now, we are at capacity. We're building new buildings, and those buildings are already leaning towards capacity. We're at a number this year, at the number that the state told us that we were gonna be 10 years from now. And this particular density of housing is extremely concerning. The gentleman before me mentioned, or a couple gentlemen mentioned busing. Busing into that is a concern, it appears. So we'd just like you to think about those things as you're reviewing this particular property. We have issues with not only buildings, but staff, guidance counselors, social workers, how long our kids are having to wait in food lines. Everything that happens when we bring in more kids with housing, we all have to take into account. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Bob General?
Thank you, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bob Janelle. I'm the superintendent of Southwest Licking Local Schools. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm going to maybe reinforce a little bit of what Mrs. Engel just said. But first let me share that I'm not opposed to growth. Actually, I believe growth is a positive sign for the community. What I am opposed to is growth that would overload the current infrastructure at a pace that exceeds the planned enhancements to our infrastructure. Schools and their capacity to educate kids should be and need to be considered as a part of the community's infrastructure. The Southwest Licking local schools have just started a $135 million project to enhance our facilities. This project was developed and supported by the current taxpayers in our district. This project was based on the expected 10-year growth of our students, which does not account for high-density housing developments coming to Pataskala. High-density housing will likely increase our enrollment at a rate that will ultimately have a negative effect on our schools. I want to emphasize to you tonight, as superintendent, the district is already pushing the school's enrollment capacity, even with the additional renovations and new construction buildings. If high-density housing is allowed, the district may be faced with enrollment issues at a pace that exceeds our current ability for growth. I understand that the area is already zoned for this type of housing. I would like for you also to consider what impact the high number of potential students in a small area would have on the daily traffic patterns. It is my belief that there will be a significant traffic issue in that area. The district alone will need to send additional buses up and down Watkins Road multiple times every day. On behalf of the Southwest Licking Local Schools, I would like for you to keep our infrastructure and traffic concerns in mind when you make the decision. Thank you.
Ryan Young.
Hello, my name is Ryan Young. I'm at 214 Aston Court. I'm in Barrington Ridge. My biggest concern is the traffic. Just pulling out of Barrington Ridge during high traffic volume times and rush hour. There's a lot of times where I go to make a right to go out on Broad Street and I can't even get out because of the traffic's just overflowing down Watkins Road. So of course, you know, you'll wait there and wait for somebody to be kind enough to let you out. Well, big concern is building the apartment complex across the street. You know, you mentioned that there's 18 two-bedrooms. Well, that's less than half. The rest are going to be 3 bedrooms. So think about the many cars that's going to be there, not to mention the visitors. So essentially, you got an extra 100 cars that need to come out of there. Well, I know I'm having a tough time just getting out of my community to go to work. So put another 100 cars there, how hard is that going to be to get those people out, including the people in Barrington Ridge, not to mention the people that's on Down Hollow Road, and that's kind of in the country a little bit because that's a main intersection. Not to mention there's 2 real bad accidents at least every year. Right where the light is, there's a big slope that goes down, and during winter time it gets real icy where a lot of people will be parked, but their car will be slipping very so slightly, and sometimes there's a lot of accidents caused just by little small fender benders, but then there's other ones that go through the intersection that's real dangerous where they get essentially T-boned. So real bad accidents right there. So that was my concern is the amount of traffic. You got 2 lanes, one going both ways, and I just don't see how you can have that amount of traffic there with the high density of housing that's going to be built and be safe for everybody and everybody get in and out for work, to and from. So that was a big concern, and then you know, we bought our house there about 6 years ago to start a family. You know, my daughter's 3 now, so we picked this community for the school district, somewhere safe for us to raise a family, and that's a big concern with the busing and everything. Not to mention the people that's going to cut through Barrington Ridge to go through our community to go out the other side of Broad Street. Basically a shortcut to bypass that because of that problem. There's already a lot of people that do that anyway, but you add another 100 cars or so, give or take, it's going to happen even more. And that, you know, is a threat to the kids that are riding their bikes and playing out there.
Yes.
So that was basically what I came here to say, and kind of put that out on the table and just make sure everybody realizes the big concern of the traffic and whatnot.
Okay, the next group. Drew Clark, Rick Cox, Janet Davis, Tim Barrett, and Beth Sexton. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
I do.
Thank you. Drew?
I live at 174 Wintergreen Loop, Pataskala. It is in Harrison Township, Beechwood Trails. And I also thank you for hearing our comments tonight. The notification issue, while, no, at least I talked to you this morning about that. I understand that they were sent out, but they were not received until Monday. And so that's 2 days notice. The developer obviously has a month to form a response and concerns. And so the turnout you have here is from 2 days worth of notice. And I think that speaks to the fact that these apartments are a major concern on a variety of levels. I echo the concerns over traffic. I also would like to request a traffic study be done. I think there is a lot of firsthand experience and proof that we need to make sure those ducks are in a row before we pull the trigger on this. There are a lot of concerns with the amount of cars and that short span to the Watkins Road and Broad Street light. The school issue, I thank representatives for being here. I also agree with. with busing and the safety of the kids on Watkins. Watkins every year becomes more and more a raceway. Once you get out of Pataskala, it becomes a freeway. We've had informal discussions about what can be done about that. You have to remember Beechwood Trail spans both sides of that road, and we have kids and that kind of thing going back and forth. It's going to become more of a cut through to get up to 161 for these residents as well. A lot of the fears that have been told tonight, I also echo. One thing that was said by your staff that really kind of stood out to me is that this is not part of Pataskala's comprehensive plan. The reason for the zoning, as far as we understand, is that it was zoned for the condos, and when things crashed, they shut it down. And so we're trying to shoehorn something into what is not on the master plan for our city. And I think, you know, as the commission, you have the power to really look at that and see if this really makes the best sense. I'd just like to ask kind of a rhetorical question, and then that is if you believe that this will enhance the neighborhood and quality of life for the city and specifically for the neighborhood and residents or work. I know it won't, and I ask that you consider that as well. It just speaks to me that we are the ones that live here. This is a business deal. Everyone deserves to make a fair living for the developer, but we're the ones that are kind of stuck with it. And we also have the power to determine what kind of city we want to live in. And I know that rests largely on this commission, so I really ask you to consider those points and the rest that are going to be made after me. So thanks for the time.
Rick Cox?
I'm with Mr. Heidman.
Okay. Jana Davis?
Jana Davis, 5419 Watkins Road. So I own the property directly next to Meeting Kennels. Which is the one that's affected by the variance that's coming up. My concern is multiple, and you've heard them all tonight. And I'm a little emotional. But who is going to police all of this? All this activity, and what Mr. Heidmeyer's proposing. Who's going to police that? Putting up cameras all over that complex. Once he gets approval, can't he just do whatever he wants? I'm just asking you.
Well, city staff would be responsible for policing, making sure the plans are built out as approved, whenever that's approved.
Yeah, and our property values are gonna plummet. Personally, if that happens, I'm gonna ask for my property value to be devalued, so I don't have to pay as much taxes. Yeah, this is very upsetting to all of us. And Mr. Heidmeyer is gonna make his money and leave. And everybody said that here tonight, but I'm just telling you, this is really, really scary for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Barrett?
Evening, I'm Tim Barrett. I live at 575 Richmond Drive. I'm in Jefferson Meadows condominium. There's a plat map showing where the apartments would be in relation to ours, right almost at the very end of the document, but I'm the furthest west, not quite further south, because the Monticello core group went towards Watkins. And first of all, point of clarification, Mr. Boggs, you said when we began that certainly this is just transportation corridor overlay approval, but something else had already been approved, and we weren't talking about that. I just needed clarification on what had been approved.
The base zoning, multifamily zoning.
Okay.
That's what was done in 2005,
yeah.
at least.
Okay, thank you. I would think it'd be contingent upon the commission to make sure that all the boxes are checked for chapter 1239 and chapter 1259 under the code, and before making a decision for taking action. I guess my main concern is with 1283 in the landscaping. And for you to approve that, you would actually have to grant a waiver. The woods that are just to the west of Jefferson Meadow that would bound this, part of those are going to be taken out. And certainly we all want to have woods around us. We'd like to have a visual barrier. Part of that would be taken out. The visual barrier would not be there. I walked out of my condo this evening. Of course, it's winter, there are no leaves, and I looked out there and I thought, you know, within a year or so, I could see two-story developments looking right down at us, because that elevation is higher than where we are. So I would just ask you to take all those things into consideration as you're considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Sexton.
Hi, my name is Beth Sexton. I live at 5447 Watkins Road. I am the middle house on Watkins, yes. We have lived there for the last 10 years, since 2008 actually. Our property is adjacent and directly west of the property for which the application was filed. The applicant, Mr. Heitmeyer, is also requesting a variance for the appeals board to be exempt from the road frontage requirement on the northern portion of this land parcel. This was a record turnout at the meeting from neighboring residents who opposed the variance, which I'm sure this is a record turnout for this too. We're very concerned about our property values, increased traffic, and general character of the houses on Watkins Road along this stretch, which are all single-family homes with large lots. There are no apartments along the 1.7-mile stretch of Watkins Road between Broad Street and Hollow Road. It's a major reason our family bought this house that we live in. During the hearing, Mr. Heitmeyer testified that he will build high-end apartments on the property, and I could find no specifics or commitments in his application that makes sure that this is the case. I'm here to request that the Planning and Zoning Commission take steps to ensure that will for sure be high-end complex, if you approve it. Ensuring that this takes place will decrease the financial hit we will incur on our property values, provide for less crime, and help to preserve some aspects of this neighborhood. While we hate the idea of seeing apartments being built on this location, we at least would ask for the city to take some steps to help us preserve what we have by insisting that the standards that mesh with the neighborhood. I also want to address the parking. I have 4 children. At one point, they were all at home. They all had cars. What happens if a family of 6 moves into a 3-bedroom apartment and they've all got cars? That's 6 cars. Where are they going to go? Plus all the traffic, of course. I'm just going to echo everybody else. We're very unhappy with this. So, thank you.
Okay, those are all the speaker request forms we have. In terms of questions, I know there was one comment about the fire and police not having input. They were given copies of this as all of our applications go out, and they have not commented, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So they had the opportunity, but.
And what about the schools? Were they sent something to?
Yeah.
originally?
Yeah,
But there was no reply until tonight?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did they do it 2 days ago?
Next, actually, the applicant, if you want to come back forward, and you've heard a number of concerns, we'll give you an opportunity to address any of those.
Yeah, did they just get their notice? Yeah.
Do they even own the property yet?
No. Nope. Okay, yeah, they provided that contingent upon approval by the zoning commission.
Thank you. Did you want to direct questions to us, or did you want us just to?
Well, I'll give you an
provide a
opportunity.
rebuttal?
You've heard public comments, and this is your chance to respond to those.
Thank you. One point of clarification, we did provide, and we actually met with the fire department, and they have reviewed the site plan and have approved the site plan as it stands currently.
Cannot hear you.
The fire department approved the site plan.
We've heard a number of good comments tonight, and I think we're certainly open to addressing all of those the best we can. On the trash collection issue, that will be provided by a private contractor, so we'll have to work out the exact positioning of that dumpster enclosure to make sure that they can get in and out with their equipment. Certainly, we had a number of options to look at on Watkins Road in terms of the traffic and how that would be addressed. And one of the options was to simply go ahead and provide that right turn decel lane into the property, which our plan indicates that we will design and construct according to the proper traffic codes and city requirements. The recreation equipment certainly is something that we understand has to be provided and will be provided, and it will certainly be more than a few park benches. It will be significant recreation equipment that's required.
Step chairs.
Again, there was a comment also about the one access point for fire. And again, I do want to reiterate that the fire department has reviewed that. And because the length of the drive is not over a certain length, they are comfortable with the one access point. Lighting, we looked at a number of options on lighting for the site. And we kept coming back to that we wanted to keep it more residential in feel, so we don't wanna, we're not trying to light up the whole community. We're just trying to light the neighborhood to make it safe, yet still have a residential feel to it. So that's why the lighting with the coach lights at the front door and at the garage seemed appropriate to provide enough lighting without being overbearing on the surrounding community. So I think that was.
I think in closing, the point to all this is that the property is currently zoned for multifamily, for apartments, and we're not asking for any zoning variances or changes or anything of that nature. We're just working with the confines of what the plan is for that particular parcel, and meeting all the requirements that we need to in order to create a beautiful community. And one of the things, talk about the ownership or it's my intention to own the properties, and therefore that's why if you notice on the signage where it's Bryn Mawr Crossing, it's my daughter's name, and underneath it says it's a Heitmeyer community. It's what it is. It's a Heitmeyer community. It's my name. It's what I stand behind, and it's what I've got to live with. So I may not live right next to it, but it's still my name. So.
Okay, stand by, and we'll ask for permission members to, if you have any questions based on public comment, And I would open it up for the applicant and for any of the staff members. And I didn't mention before, but we're fortunate to have Mr. Haynes with us tonight. So if there are any specific questions related to public service, then you can direct it to him as well. I think you'll respond to those, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Jerry?
First of all, thank you guys. Alan, thank you for being here again. Appreciate that. It makes it much easier for all of us. Security was also brought up, so if, and I just state if that was put in the modifications, would you have a problem with security being in the modifications as being a requirement?
I guess it's kind of a blanket comment, so I don't know what. that
Cammering
entails.
and just things like that, just for security.
I would certainly do cameras to help monitor and protect the property, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And then Alan, in terms of a traffic study, how long would that take? What would that entail if we required a traffic study?
So there's two types of traffic studies we could do. There'd be an impact study and an access study. An impact study would look at the adjacent intersections, which would be, I'm not sure if that's Middle Ground to the north, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, and then Watkins and Broad to the south. Those would show if any improvements are needed at those intersections due to this. The challenge with that is we currently don't have any impact fees required per the code, so there'd be no way to enforce that other than to perhaps ask Mr. Heitmeyer to provide impact fees. The other type of study is an access study, which would look at their access point specifically on Watkins Road. For my looking at traffic studies and familiarity with them, the chances of this needing a southbound left turn lane into it is very unlikely, but the chances of a right turn decel lane as being provided is likely.
My last question is actually to the superintendent of schools. Thank you very much for coming too, sir, if you're still here.
Yes.
I think a very valid point was brought up about school buses and that. When do they decide, or what's the decision is when they do turn into a development and when they just stay out on the road and wait for all the kids to come running down the road to get on the bus?
Well, each year we review the bus locations and we assign them. But we consider how far a student has to walk, the distance, and then also the safety of where the stop is going to happen. Not knowing the actual, measurements of the parking lot, the bus is around 45 feet in length, and we do not allow them to back up at stops where they're not supposed to. So we would have to make sure that we would have an appropriate turn lane or a turnaround in that particular area for there to be a bus going back there, if there is sufficient number of kids to warrant the bus going back there in the first place. I will say that it will be a difficult stop, knowing that intersection right now, to stop on Watkins Road if there is no, if the road is not modified. I think it's a very tough doing for a bus to pull off, and if it is a pickup at the entrance, to stop in the turn lane and put on their reds. I think it'd be very confusing to the upcoming traffic. Because a single road will stop a car. If you have multiple lanes, a car can travel through that. So there'll be some confusion and probably some enforcement issues with that, which would concern safety. So there is a lot for us to review before saying that a bus would go in or not go in, and where that stop would be.
Great. And again, I'm sure the board, we all thank you and Candy for coming and speaking too. So thank you guys very much. No more questions.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question for Scott or Jack. There was a question brought up about making sure, or who would make sure after, if this were approved, who would make sure that everything's done as it was promised. And I guess the next, just for the public's benefit, what happens if this is approved as far as engineering drawings or specific building designs? What's the city's role going forward on that?
So should this be approved, the next step would be to submit engineering drawings. At that point, we look at drainage, the length of the deceleration lane, make sure all those calculations were correct. If those look good, then the city signs off on those. The next step would be a pre-construction meeting with the city staff. We'd go over the rules that are required as part of the construction. In order for them to start building The apartments, they have to submit an application for new construction. We review what they submit to make sure it meets everything that was approved. If that permit is approved, they can begin construction. Once the building is complete, the city then would go out and inspect to make sure that they did construct it according to plan. So there's multiple steps to make sure that if things are approved as is, they are constructed as they were approved to be.
Thank you. Rob?
And I don't know if you hit on it or not with all the, we talked about parking. Everybody's had an issue with the number of parking spaces. I know that per requirements you're within the guidelines, but obviously I've lived in a place like that you had a one car garage and one place to park, and it really does not work. Is that something you guys are willing to address as far as trying to expand parking in the area?
In general, I mean, we've been trying to make sure we identify as many secondary parking spaces as possible, you know, and through our final, you know, configuration and the engineering, you know, if we can certainly identify some more, we certainly will, because I think it's in the best interest of everybody all the way around.
Because right now you're 18
Right.
to 44 units.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think addressing the situation with the use of the garage and the lease language would help facilitate that as well. But at the end of the day, yeah, we would certainly want to provide as much as we can.
What is the interior height of the garage?
They're 9-foot plate height on the wall, so it'd be probably 10 foot.
Okay. Probably not enough room to have a lift where you can put 2 vehicles in, plus the drag 4 guys.
Sign me up.
Rick, any questions?
Yeah, just a comment. We've had a few cases over the years where you start out with, you know, pretty important disagreements between residents of the neighboring community and the developer and so on and so on. And we've got the unusual oddity of having the zoning for multifamily approved, 14 years ago. And, but anyway, the thought I want to throw out, and obviously you all may reject it, but I think it would be wise to have some meetings with the developer, other people he chooses to bring in, however many of residents of the neighboring area want to come, and see if you can identify some issues that you can find some common ground. I think that's often worth it rather than just starting out with hostility. Just a thought.
Thank you. Ann?
So if we do require a traffic study be done, that would postpone this hearing until we get that for what, another month?
How long do the traffic study typically take?
I don't know how long exactly one would take, probably should be able to be done within a month.
I mean, I don't see how we could go forward without having a traffic study.
That's right. That's
Well,
right. Thank
and
you.
To follow up on Alan's comment, I think the impact study is probably
Yes,
what's
I
really.
think impact is much
I meant impact study, I didn't mean traffic.
Yeah, I mean, the other study is not gonna show anything that we already know.
Honestly, I don't know that either study's gonna do much for us without the impact fees. And like I said, the access study won't show anything that's not already being required.
What about the, having the state of Ohio, since it is a state route involved?
I don't believe that would make any difference because it's home rules, so the city of Pawhuska has control of that intersection.
It's such a dangerous intersection
Very.
already. I don't know why that would not be included in the study.
It would be included in the study, but any impacts that are shown, we don't have a way to enforce any commitment from the developer.
Right, because of the impact fees not being part of our code yet. Or
We're working on that,
requirements,
but they're not.
we're
We
working
haven't
on
been
it.
able to catch
But
up.
he might be nice enough to offer them and share them. How much are the fees? So we wouldn't know the fees until, it would have to be a mathematical equation, but,
Can we be informed?
I
of-
still think we should have it in writing, we should have an impact.
Yes.
Study done. We can't really assume, shouldn't assume. And then we would come back to square one here after that, and then, I don't know, could you reduce the number of units? That might help, because our schools are already
At capacity
max.
beyond?
It might be something to consider. And then you could raise your rent, maybe put condos in.
Is there a question or?
I'm just throwing suggestions out. As you can see,
Thank you.
you have some support there for condos, but that's all I have.
What is your view on the impact study, traffic impact study?
Well, I guess the question, I mean, I defer, I really defer to the city administrators and zoning, officers there to give me a direction on what their evaluation is and expectations and what their needs, and then in turn what we need to do. And I think, with regards to the turn lane, I mean, I think at the end of the day, from what I understand, it sounds like the premise here is to put in the deceleration lane, and there really is no other. Yeah. Aaron, you're gonna do that.
But if the traffic impact study showed that there was significant impact to Watkins Road, what Mr. Haynes is saying is that there's nothing in place in the city code to provide for impact fees anyway. So that would be a stopping point then, to say, okay, great, the study says that there should be some impact, but there's nothing in place for that to be carried forward. On the other side, if they require a traffic access study, what it's gonna show is that there should be a right turn northbound decel lane for the project. And Mr. Heitmeyer is already offering to go ahead and construct that without even doing the traffic management, access management study. That right turn decel lane is, from my experience, is probably on the order of $40,000 to $50,000 cost that he's offering to put in to help with traffic safety.
So I guess, at the end of the day, it's, we're again, addressing all the items that are in the requirement to construct and put in place, and I think we're fulfilling those.
Okay, next we'll move on to Aaron.
If this happens to get passed, do we see the construction plans again, or are we not seeing anything anymore?
You would not see the construction plans, that would be done administratively.
The parking is bad. I don't like it. One car in front of the other.
Is there on-street parking provided in this?
On-street parking?
No, just 18 extra spots in the complex.
Yeah, there'll be parking in Windridge Drive.
Most of you guys have addressed all of my questions. I echo Ann's thing with an impact study. I drive eastbound on Broad at least twice a day, and I'm always stopping waiting for somebody to turn northbound on Watkins, so that's just 100 more cars estimate is just gonna exacerbate it, so I agree. I think an impact study needs to be done.
Yes.
If it comes back and, there do need to be improvements, yes, we don't have anything to enforce it, but, that can also drive our decision with other things that happen in the area.
Okay, thanks. Any other follow-up questions? I did see at least one hand back there, and
I simply wanted to state with respect to an impact study. The purpose of an impact study is to see how it impacts the community. So we should look at that. If it's not a negative impact, oh well, we're just all biased against departments. But you will find with a traffic study, the traffic count and the impact, looking at the accidents that have occurred, there is an impact. And if a developer wants a parcel bad enough, they'll improve the area. You know, Polaris is a really good example of somebody who wanted to build badly up there, and he built interchanges. So that intersection needs to be 4 lanes both ways if we're gonna add all of these extra houses up there. And so an impact study will tell you whether that really is an emotional reaction or a physical requirement. And your decision should be informed and based on that information. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, I'm sorry.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
My name's Mark Van Buren. My concern is, you have the
No,
apartments.
hold on, sir. Yeah.
I have to swear you in.
You're fine.
I'm ready.
Step up there, please. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and start with your name and address again.
My name is Mark Van Buren. My address is 4832 Keller Road, Hebron, Ohio, and it's 43025. I came here, I wasn't gonna say anything, but it's tough not to. My concern is, you have the drive coming out, right across from Oxford. Think about the property to the south that's going to be developed. Are you going to, the next person, stub another road out on Watkins Road? Or should this be designed where you have a service road coming up in front of that other property to go in front of these apartments and bring it all out there, and maybe someday there could be a traffic light? Because I think if you approve this the way it is today, you're gonna have problems whenever that corner, somebody's gonna come in here and wanna put a gas station. You know, I've lived here all my life, I've seen it. Or somebody wanna put something in there commercial, and they're gonna stub a road out, another one on Watkins, and you're gonna have a hard time saying no because you can't land on it. What I'm saying is now, you have the perfect chance to work with these gentlemen, put a service road up through there and do it right. And that way that whole area is coming out on one access point. And if you go to other cities, that's what they do. They want that one access point coming out. And so please take a look at that, because I can see that being a mess when the next people come in here and say, you know, we want to develop that. And we now need an access because you can't get close enough to that driveway coming out of those apartments. Like I said, please take a look at that. And I do believe, even if you don't have fees, you need to do an impact and a traffic study. And the other thing that's going to happen is, my guess is within a month or two, you're going to have another developer that wants to put 60-some houses, and probably 30 of them will come out into Beechwood Trails. And so you're going to also have that traffic. So there's a lot that's going to happen there. You're not going to stop it, but just kind of think about that access road. And if we can do this right now, where down the road you're not kicking yourself saying, we can't put another road out there, what are we going to do? So please take that in consideration. This is an important decision. Please don't rush it tonight. You know, do your studies, talk about it some more, have your engineers look at it, and take a good hard look at that service road, or at least stubbing it out for a service road. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Procedurally, if we ask for an traffic impact study, we could put that on a condition, as a condition, but that would require approving it with that condition.
That's correct.
If we were to table this, is there any way to table it pending the impact study?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's what I would prefer, but that's just me, so.
I would also agree that I think it definitely needs a little bit more discussion, a little bit more thought. We've heard a lot of different ideas and thoughts, which are all appreciated. Thank you, everybody. Access road sounds good. The still question is, how close is that going to be to the light? So there's a lot of things that have to be addressed with the access road. But I would agree with tabling and, for the impact.
And then the other issue that's not ours, but the BZA's action on the lot split, or the variance, I mean, which would allow for the lot split. That's something else that's a factor. Other comments, commission members?
I would agree with you.
If there's no, well, I mean, if you're ready to take an action, or
Yeah.
do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we table application TCOD-19-001, for the time to get an impact study. Or traffic impact study, and also to give the applicant some time to address some of the concerns from the community.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that motion? Roll call.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Truex?
Yes.
Mr. Begarow?
Yes.
That motion passes, and this will be on the table. Come back at a future meeting. And again, for all of you that were here and commented, we appreciate that. That's all part of the official record. Thank you again. I know there are a number of you, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. All right, we'll continue with the agenda. Next up with our modified agenda is rezoning application ZON 1903. The applicant is Spring Communities LLC for the property at 6031 Summit Road. Jack, you're going to do the presentation?
Thank you, sir. Like I said, this is ZON-19-003. The applicant here is Grand Communities LLC. Location is the unimproved property at 6031 Summit Road Southwest. Current acreage is 84.18, and it is zoned R-87, medium low density residential. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plan for a 211 lot plan development district named Sage Point pursuant to section 1255.19 of the Passport Code. Take a look at an area map here. You can see we have Summit Road running north and south, and the parcel also borders Cleveland Road here running east to west. So quick background on the property, 84.18 acres. It has two frontages, approximately 1,200 feet on Summit Road Southwest and approximately 950 feet on the Cleveland Road. There are existing tree lines on the property along the north and south property lines. Also along the property lines where the parcel borders the existing residential properties on Cleveland Road. And there's an approximately 880-foot tree line in the northeast corner, as well as an existing tree stand right about in the middle of the northern property line that includes about 7.5 acres of vegetation. And all these measurements were taken online with tools available to the online auditors, GIS, so they are just approximations. It's currently zoned R87, medium low density residential. Take a look at the existing conditions. You see the tree lines along the north, east, and along the south property lines here, where it borders these parcels. Tree stand up here in the north, and tree line here. So a little bit of background for the zoning history. This property's been considered for development in the residential subdivision at least 3 times previously. All these proposed rezonings were not accepted by City Council. 2001, we had Deerfield Crossing, which is 205 units and a density of 2.43 acres per unit. 2005, we had the Villas of Terabella at 144 units and a density of 1.70. And again, Villas of Terabella, but in 2007, they brought it down to 120 units with a density of 1.42 units per acre. So, as part of this proposal, the developer is proposing to turn the property into a 211 lot planned residential development by Sage Point. And 10 acres of this, of the frontage that's along Cleveland Road Southwest, is to be dedicated to the Licking Heights School District. Take a look at the overall layout of the subdivision here. This is the 10 acres on Cleveland Road that will be dedicated to Licking Heights.
access off of Summit Road here. Some general summary of the site. Home site's at 211, and a density of 2.51 units per acre. Total acreage again 84.18 acres. The acreage that is only in the residential lots, however, is 35.58, and an open space acreage of 28.86, with the additional 10 acres dedicated to the Licking Heights School District. Minimum lot sizes are to be 52 feet width, with a lot size of 52 by 120, which is about 6,240 square feet or 0.14 acres. Minimum setbacks are proposed at 25 feet to the front, 5 feet for the side, which is 10 feet minimum between the structures, and a rear yard minimum setback of 20 feet. I actually included a typical lot layout section, so you can kind of get a general idea here is how the setbacks and the building emblems will work. Access to be handled through one boulevard-style entrance onto Sage Point Avenue from Summit Road, opposite Windward Drive Boulevard. That's to run from Summit Road southwest to the intersection with the proposed Woodruff Drive. It'll be a 10-foot wide median at the entrance with 11-foot wide lanes on either side. Here we take a close look at the entrance, with Summit Road being here. The proposed Sage Point Avenue running east to west, and the boulevard will run to the intersection here with Woodruff Drive. The median here is about 100 feet off of Summit Road. There are also additional access points. There'll be one emergency access drive from Sage Point Avenue up to the 10-acre dedication of Licking Heights, and that further connection of the emergency access is to be made at such time as that 10-acre parcel develops. There will also be two stub streets, one to the north on Woodruff Drive and one to the south on Lavender Lane. Here's a closer look at the emergency access here from Sage Point Avenue coming down up to the 10-acre dedication to the school district, and at such time when the school district develops this property, and that will be continued on to Cleveland Road. Just an overall layout looking at all the different access points. Here we've got the boulevard entrance off of Summit Road, the emergency access to continue on through to Cleveland Road, the two substreets, first one here on Lavender Lane to the south and one to the north off of Woodruff. Signage. Applicants proposing one subdivision identification sign at the entrance median to Sage Point Avenue. It's going to be a hanging sign suspended from a wood pergola with additional landscaping inside the median. The sign will be within the right-of-way of this proposal. Take a look here at the illustration that was provided. You can see the wood pergola with the sign suspended from it, located here in the middle of the median within the right-of-way with additional landscaping provided both inside the median and on either side. Landscaping, the street trees are proposed at every 50 feet with 7 different species of street trees. The existing tree lines to the northeast, southwest, and tree stand in the north are to be preserved, excepting dead and diseased trees and where development will be occurring. Some of these areas where the tree preservation zones are not in reserves. So 78 trees are proposed to be removed with 220 replacements required per code. However, 280 are being proposed. Some are in reserves A and B, and plus there will be one additional tree in each front yard of the lots. 6 to 7 foot high mounting is proposed between the detention basins and home sites in reserve A and B, with additional landscaping provided on top of that. 4 foot wide gravel path in reserve D, which will circle around with a proposed tot lot, and there will be 3 4 foot wide gravel paths in reserve E. Take a look here at their overall landscaping layout. So they've got the 4 foot wide gravel path here, circling around, and the proposed tot lot will be right here. And there's 3 4 foot wide gravel paths in reserve E, one here along this tree line, and another here up to the detention basin. So as part of this, Planning and Zoning Department has reviewed this proposal, and we've offered the following comments. So the future land use map designates this property as medium density residential, equatable to our current R20 designation. The R20 minimum lot size is 0.46 acres. However, the proposed lot size is 0.14. Allowable density under R20 would be 2.17 units per acre, or 183 units total. The applicant is proposing a density of 2.51 units per acre and a total of 211 units. Therefore, the proposed rezoning is not in line with the comprehensive plan. So the applicant submitted plans will require several divergences that were not requested. Those being one from 1255.10A1 to allow for a higher density than the base zoning classification, 1255.10G to allow for less than 16 feet between structures. And with this, the Plan Development District requirements set a minimum of 16 feet between structures, but with the proposed minimum setbacks of 5 feet, distance could be at least 10 feet between structures. And then 1255.10B1 to allow for less open space than 35% required, and 1295.09B8 to allow for the subdivision identification sign to exceed the maximum height of 6 feet. Again, the maximum height for a sign is 6 feet, and the applicant has proposed 7 feet 6 inches. So staff completed a full review of the submitted plans and the development text, drafted a full list of comments. In the interest of saving space, we didn't put all of them in here. However, there are 3 pages attached to your staff report there that detail our full list of comments. We sent this out for review, and the city engineer came back with the following comments. 1 being the combined length of Woodward Drive and Lemongrass Court exceed the 500-foot cul-de-sac length as per Table 1, Section 117.10. However, in the development text, the applicant has requested a divergence for this. 2, the radius of Woodward Drive and Lemongrass Court, Sage Point Avenue, and Wildman Way, and Lavender Lane and Wildman Way do not meet the 150-foot minimum radius per Table 1. And again, the applicant did request a divergence for this in the development text. 3, the typical boulevard section does not meet the requirements of Section 1117.11. 4, the full engineering review of the stormwater management report will be completed with the engineering plan review of this subdivision. The Public Service Director offered the following comments. 1, plat and construction plan review is in progress. 2, eyebrow curve design does not meet the minimum street radius requirements and are not preferred for plowing operations. 3, 5-foot side yard, 10-foot rear yard easements should be included in accordance with current city policy. 4, saffron code means court added to the end of the name. 5, extension to the north on Woodward Drive is not needed. 6, confirmation is needed that there will be no wetlands on this site. 7, had some comments on the storm sewer system, mostly pertaining to them being within the rear yards, and it really gives the city some hassle when we have to try to access these later on with those storm utilities being in rear yards. It also appears to be in conflict with tree preservation zones. So in these edges around the development, they included the tree preservation zone. However, a lot of these stormwater utilities will be within those zones, giving us the inclination that when they install these, they'll have to be removing trees to put those in. However, no provisions for replacement were included on the plan. 8, no parking will be required on the hydrant side of the street with street width as shown. And 9, had comments on the boulevard entrance. No parking either side of Sage Point Avenue between Summit Road and Woodward Drive, and B, proposed pavement widths of boulevard entrance are not acceptable. 10, Sage Point Avenue between Woodward Drive and Lavender Avenue, recommended some right-of-way width, pavement width revisions, and for 11 for the emergency access drive. So the access drive as shown with the development is acceptable. However, the emergency access drive across the property to the south must be installed. 2 fire department specifications for emergency access as part of the Sage Point development. Full access drive between Sage Point development and Cleveland Road shall be installed by the developer of the property to the south when it develops. He also asked them to provide a typical section for this access drive. The fire department offered the following comments. Prior to phase 3 beginning, emergency access road shall be constructed. 2, emergency access road shall be marked per fire district regulations. 3, hydrant relocation on Woodward Drive. 4, also another hydrant relocation on Saffron Cove. 5, all cul-de-sacs are to be 96 feet diameter per fire code with posted no parking signs. 6, all streets 28 feet width or less are to have no parking signs on the hydrant side of the street. Licking Heights Local Schools, as part of the plan development regulations, the applicant will meet with the school, and Dr. Wagner provided a letter confirming this and offered the following comments. He cannot endorse the project on behalf of the schools, however, he would not oppose it. And his letter is also attached to your staff report. For surrounding properties, to the north, we have it zoned rural residential, and it's currently vacant but used as a farm field. To the east, we have manufactured home residential and medium low density residential. Those are the Summit Ridge Estates Mobile Home Park and some single family homes. To the south, we have medium low density residential and light manufacturing, and those are single family homes, and the manufacturing is Ohio Steel and some other miscellaneous businesses. To the west, we have it zoned Planned Development District, which is the Glenbrook subdivision, and R20 medium density residential, and those are currently some single family homes. Just to illustrate what the surrounding zoning looks like, we have R87 zoned here in the red. The mobile home manufactured housing here is in blue. M1 is the orange here, bottom of the south. Rural residential in purple to the top. The planned development district is the brighter yellow here, and R20 being the lighter shade of yellow here. So as part of this, staff has offered some possible modifications should planning and zoning choose to attach them to this application. One being the applicant shall address all comments from planning and zoning staff, the city engineer, public service director, and the West Licking Joint Fire District. And two, the planning and zoning commission shall approve the following divergences. A 1255.10A1 to allow for a higher density than the base zoning classification. B 1255.10 part G to allow for less than 16 feet between structures. 1255.10B1 to allow for less open space, 35% required. And D 1295.09B8 to allow for the subdivision identification sign to exceed the maximum height of 6 feet. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Jack. So you mentioned you have what, 3.5 pages of, I think, for deficiencies and.
Yes, that's correct.
And that's just from the staff, right?
Just from planning and zoning staff.
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of leaning toward tabling it to get those resolved, but we will continue to, I think we should continue with the hearing, certainly. Rob? Rip?
No, there seems to be a lot isn't in finished state, and I realize it's just a preliminary plan. So if you're leaning, I'll lean the same way.
And again, give it full pot. Ann?
I did have a question about why, do you know why the rezonings were not accepted by city council in the previous years?
It is my understanding it was due to drainage concerns. That's my understanding.
Has that been addressed, or
No.
it's still a swamp?
We live in swampland.
If you put that there, you're gonna flood every house on
Okay,
frickin'
hold
side.
on, you'll have an opportunity later.
Well, you wanna table it?
Could we still get, they came out, we could hear them before we
Yeah,
table it?
we are continuing with the hearing.
Yeah. That's all I have for now.
No questions, but I think a table is appropriate.
Dustin? Thank you. Chair? Okay. Next, we'll ask for the applicant, I believe Connie, okay. And I'll swear you in. You swear that any testimony you give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer unto God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Would you like control of this?
I would love to, thank you. Hi, my name is Amanda Webb. I'm at 3940 Olympic Boulevard in Erlanger, Kentucky. The zip code is 41018. Just want to thank you guys for hearing us tonight, giving us the opportunity to present. This is just a little bit of imagery for the community and kind of gives you a feel of what we had in mind when we were planning it. Kind of want to take you through our objectives. Want to introduce you to who we are with Fisher Homes. I know you're probably pretty familiar with us by now with Karen Manor, but I also kind of want to go through the community context, the theme, and just the community vision that we have going forward, and also be able to answer any questions. So, again, I'm with Fisher Homes. I'm actually with Grand Communities, who is the developer for Fisher Homes. Fisher Homes has been in business for almost 40 years now. We've been here for a long time. We're very active in the Columbus community as well as in the city of Pataskala. We're working out of the settlements of Pataskala. We've recently came before you and brought Hare Manor as well. That's another single-family subdivision. We love Pataskala, so we're really happy to be here. Just to kind of familiarize you with the site, this site is, as Jack stated, north of Cleveland Road, east of Summit Road. To the west, we have the Glenbrook subdivision. To the east is the mobile home park. We have another community that's not too far away, Royal Elm. Some other points of interest are we're about 10 minutes, away from the new Google facility that's planned. We're close to the offices, and also very important, we're also close to the school district with the Summit Primary School. Next door. This is a view really of our site looking east, looking across the Glenbrook subdivision. The Glenbrook subdivision, similar to ours, it's a density of about 2.29 units per acre. The mobile home park closer to us, it's on the east side. Their density of about 5.46 units per acre. We also have Summit Station, which is also around 40 units per acre. So staying in close proximity with the densities. This is us looking at Glenbrook subdivision. This is where our entrance would be located, be directly across from Glenbrook subdivision. One thing about Fisher Homes, when we plan a community, our mission is really the total home solution, the best home solution. So when we were planning this community, we came before you, we did our informal review, and I know it was brought up about the past subdivisions and why they weren't approved, and you guys expressed a lot of concern with drainage. I know there's a lot of residents here also from Glenbrook with drainage concerns as well. One thing that we definitely spent a lot of time looking at was the drainage. We realize it's an issue out there, and we've worked with staff, with Alan, we've met with them to try to come up with something to help the residents here. We have a stormwater report we've done. We took the time to do that. We have our engineer, he performed that report. What we found was the pond over here, the one that I believe is the main one for concern that floods a lot. The water from our site comes over there. Right now our site is undeveloped, so it's basically just runoff from the site. That pond was designed for, see that yellow area? That was about 5.5 acres. That pond was designed to support that 5.5 acres of runoff. Currently, with the undeveloped site right now, about 40 acres of runoff is flowing through there, across Summit Road and over to that pond. And it's causing a lot of strain on their stormwater system. It's also causing a lot of flooding. So we've looked into that, we've identified that, and we think we found some solutions to help remedy that situation. One thing with our site is we will have a lot of overcapacity on our site to take in that water and hold it on our site, so we won't be creating all that additional flow over to Glenbrook Estates. So with that being said, I'd like to lead you into some other aspects of our site, things that we thought about for the site. It's 84 acres. We have 4 stormwater ponds on the site. Those ponds are oversized. They add additional capacity. They will have a controlled and a limited flow and release rate, so it will actually be less water going there than what is today. Also, something really important I'd like to point out with our site, you see the amount of open space. This is a really well laid out plan. Basically, only 9% of the lots on this site back to another home site. So I think there's 18 total that are considered social lots. All the other sites back up to either open space, a tree line, some type of a reserve of some sort. I know one of the things that was discussed was we're requesting divergence to our open space requirement of 35%. We have 34.6%, I believe, right now, so we're 0.4% off. What that doesn't take into consideration is the amount of land, the 10 acres that we're donating to the school district. So really, that's 45% of our site that's either open space or being dedicated to the school district. So I think that's something to be said about our site. I also think it's something to be said about the layout of our site, how all of those lots, not all, but the majority, about 90%, back to something other than another home site. I think that's really important, and I think it's a great plan. I mean, I'm sure you guys would all love to not have to back to another person if you do, or you would find that it's more desirable to back to open space or a reserve of some sort. We've also included trails on this plan. We have the ponds that will be amenitized, so the fountains and be there for enjoyment. There's large spaces of open space where, you know, the kids can go over and have a pickup game of football or baseball. So it's just another benefit of this plan. Take you through kind of at the entrance. We understand that Summit Road is a rural road. So what we did, and something that we had discussed with staff, is we have to have the ponds there to collect that water. We need that just to kind of help the residents and help detain that water, help retain that water on site. So we thought putting those ponds closer to Summit Road, mounding behind the ponds so you won't see the home sites from Summit Road. So as you drive up Summit Road, you'll have a very beautifully landscaped open space area with ponds, a heavily landscaped area. We'll have mounding in there. Just some imagery up here that would show you what our vision for those ponds, and those are actual pictures from other developments within the Columbus area that Fisher Homes has developed. So it also shows you a picture of our signage that we're proposing. Then I'm going to go through and get to the open space. We have a vision having a tot lot, some trails, also, you know, the ponds as amenities. Again, some additional illustrative renderings and visuals. This shows some of our product that we're proposing. I'll get to some more of those in a second. Right here, this is an example of a home site that we have, just some interior views. We have the higher end interiors with the countertops, the cabinets. This one per se has a loft upstairs. These are our Maple Street buyer. They're typically the first time home buyer, the younger family, the new startup family. Some more visionary material. So for summary, just want to kind of sum up the plan. Some of the key community benefits, you know, we are building a sustainable community. What that means is we have a very efficient lot layout, which minimizes utilities, which minimizes infrastructure. Ultimately, that minimizes the maintenance costs for the taxpayers, for our future residents that will have in these homes. 74% of the home sites back up to some type of either open space, or they have a tree line, you know, something that isn't not another home site. We've also, I didn't really touch on this much, but we have been coordinating with the Licking Heights Local School District to donate a 10-acre piece to the school district. So I believe we have their support, if you would, on this project. They are getting a 10-acre school site. We have the access that will be going through their site. They've agreed to that. We've worked through that, and we'll continue to work with the school district. I also believe in our engineer. We all believe that this will improve and at least help start to address those concerns for the Glenbrook residents. You know, we want to be good neighbors to them, obviously. With our one thing, another thing I didn't address, but I'd like to highlight, we did have a traffic study done. We will be making improvements. We'll be putting in a southbound left turn lane onto Summit Road. So that did come out in our traffic study. We've also agreed with Alan, and we've agreed to dedicate the right-of-way on Summit Road with an additional, I believe it was 15 feet, an additional 15 feet to that. So we have been working with staff and coordinating that as well. We've provided the trails, just a pretty good overarching great layout for this community. You know, we are really excited to be in Pataskala. We think that this is a great community. You guys are going to be seeing the development, and I think that this is a good all-around community, a sustainable community for this. I know you've discussed tabling it. We've reviewed staff's comments and concerns, and we agree with most of them. So we're willing to work with staff and continue to work with them. They've been great to work with. So if you have any questions for me, but I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start with Rob.
What are you looking for as far as your target price on the houses?
Sure. We believe that these will start in the mid to high 2s and go up to the mid 3s.
Okay.
Right. Low to
That's
mid 3s.
Okay, but that's plenty. You're talking about first-time home buyers.
Yes, and that's why we have there's a variety of price options. So we're thinking the mid 2s to start out, but they could range all the way to the low 3s.
And you're asking for variances because you want basically the places to be closer to each other.
Yes, just to kind of highlight some of the variances we are requesting. We are requesting a variance to the open space. It's a very small variance. Part of that is because we've had to oversize and we've added more storm ponds than what we probably need, but we're trying to capture all of that water. So by capturing the water to limit and decrease the amount of flow that goes over to the Glenbrook subdivision, so we're just adding additional ponds to additional capacity. So we are going over, I believe we're allowed up to 15% of that of ponds to be calculated as part of our open space. Because we have more ponds, we have to take that out of our open space calculation. But we've also had requested if we could include the land that we're dedicating to the school for a public purpose also as part of our open space calculation. So, I mean, ultimately, we have 45% of our.
But as far as for how close the houses are to each other, you mentioned there's plenty of open space to the back.
Mm-hmm.
How close are they?
So,
next to each other?
sure. We did request a minimum building separation of 10 feet, which is common and similar to what we had approved at Hare Manor. I realize it's a different zoning district, but because we're going PUD, land development, we did request a 10-foot. I think staff had requested that we bump that to, one of the comments the staff made was it our setback, was it a 6-foot setback?
So for the requirements of the plan district, it sets a minimum distance between the structures of 16 feet,
Right.
and you requested 10
We
feet,
did
so.
request 10 feet, so.
Okay. I mean, that's just you're giving space behind, but you're
Yeah.
stacking them like cordwood.
One
and
of
that's one of
those.
the big things that Tasman really doesn't like.
No, I totally understand that and I respect that. I think one of the important things to think about is when we do stack them closer, what we're doing is we're actually reducing the amount of street that's built. So what that does, I think I can all agree, it does reduce the amount of street and the amount of infrastructure and utilities being pushed through there. So long term, it actually helps reduce costs at a later time. So,
That's all.
thank you.
Rip? Ann?
Well, I know obviously we already have our plan for the evening, but I'm curious about the letter we received from the Licking Heights superintendent, and I don't know if he's here. Is he here? Not here. Just for the benefit of our residents and visitors, he made a comment in his letter to us that he says, although he cannot endorse the project on behalf of the school district, he would not oppose the project as he believes it has some merit and could enhance the school district. Or it would enhance, I'm sorry, He would not oppose the project as he believes it has some merit and could enhance the value of nearby area homes, especially those on Windward Drive and Cleveland Road Southwest. Additionally, the developer has engaged with the school district by offering to partner on future projects to help the area. So first mention, I'm curious, he's been opposed to all other home sites, and now all of a sudden, this one he's okay with, because the developer says he'll help with future projects in the area, and I assume because he's getting some little bit of land to help the school. So that's, I'm curious, but maybe you could expand on what he's saying by offering to partner on future projects to help the area.
Sure. Connie, do you wanna talk about the meeting that you had, with the meetings, plural? Do you wanna talk about the meetings that you had with Mr.
Connie Klima, P.O. Box 991, Pataska, Ohio.
Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth, that you shall answer unto God?
I do, I
Thank
do.
you.
I met with Dr. Wagner numerous times on this. In fact, he also came and looked at some of the Fisher products. In my conversations with him, and I cannot speak on his behalf, obviously, but my discussions with him about this site, I think he said to me the first time after we were talking about the 10-acre site, and the fact that it would probably, I believe it's intended to maybe be for a bus-type garage or something of that sort. And also, I'm sorry?
Nobody said anything, go on.
Okay.
Well, that's not.
And also the fact that, that this type of a development, he felt in that Summit Ridge corridor area would actually be something that would be, an improvement to the area. And he believed that, the site itself, he said, I obviously can't on the record come out and say I'm going to support it, but I will not oppose it. And those were his exact words, and I think he mirrored that in his letter to you. But I did meet with him probably 3 times for this project.
And what were the suggested, what were the offering to partner on future projects to help the area? What is that? What would you help the area with partnering on?
Well, I don't know what that means, except for the fact that, it may mean that by the fact that the 10-acre area, for instance, that obviously is something that in the future, if they're building there, we're going to have an emergency access through there. And then we would also be then working with them to put a main road through there when they develop their site. But I don't know that answer, you would have to ask him directly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to point out the question earlier about the open space, as Mandy was stating, this site has really consolidated once again, which is what we usually want, the open space, but also the fact that the additional part of that divergence was the fact that you're usually only allowed to have 10% of that open space be counted toward stormwater, and we have 16%. Which is why the divergence. So in reality, we have actually closer to 46% of this site is not being built with houses. It's either open space or it's stormwater or trails, basically trails and that type of thing. So in the cluster design, which is actually, home developers don't build houses that don't get sold and don't build on lots that don't get sold. The market has been in recent years to have smaller lots with the same size houses as are usually on larger lots, but have more open space that a homeowner does not have to take care of. So whether you give it in the front or the back or the side, and they're trying to say, we're going to give all the open spaces in the rear and have a narrow side yard. Most people aren't doing much in their side yards usually anyway. People who are buying these homes, and they are buying these homes, like this style and like that amount of open space. And I think that is the reason. Some people don't. Some people want to live on a 5-acre lot and have a full view all the way around and no one close to their house. But the people who are buying in these subdivisions want to be in the community, want to have large houses. These houses are not below the amount, the minimum or basically are going up into the higher square footages. These are the same size houses on smaller lots with common areas that they don't have to pay for, themselves and mow and take care of, so that's a real positive.
How many square feet? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the house sizes themselves will, start, I've got that for you. They start in the ranch style from 1,400 and go clear up to the 3,000s.
On a 50-foot wide lot.
Pardon me? Yeah, it
I'm
works.
talking-
Yeah, and also, I mean, I have to say this, it was said earlier in the evening that, houses can't be built on a 60-foot wide lot. Houses can be built on, a 20-foot size width lot. They can be built on a lot of size lots. The size of a house doesn't dictate the size of the lot unless, of course, the lot's smaller than it. The houses themselves can be built there. They are being built there. It's happening at the settlement and all over. That's one of the main things. I also want to add, though, that the stormwater, it doesn't, we knew that people in Glenbrook would be here. I know what I wanted to say. You had asked about the history. I actually was around here doing zonings back in 2000 and 2000 through 2005 and 7. If you recall, in 2007, the state of and I've got the actual notes from Allison Terry that I pulled from back then when Allison was here. In 2007, that was at the height of the high time in real estate, and a lot of subdivision developers had come out and had planned on the boom, and they were basically platting a lot more lots than they had buyers for, and then 2008 came, and it put a real stop on things. So what happened is in 2007 that was starting to happen. In 2007, the last time that Terabella came through, there were more than 150 some lots in excess of any buyers around, and the city council was starting to see that the economy was going to start dipping, and that's when they basically put the stop on that one. So that's a bit of that history. So. Stormwater also, this is not a small thing. We've looked at pictures of the Glenbrook people's area, also the stormwater facilities, the water that goes over the road. We got pictures from staff. We did a lot of research on this. It could have come here much sooner, but a lot of that and a lot of time and energy has been on the stormwater issues. Those stormwater issues have haunted this site and the surrounding area for all these years. And they, when Brand Communities came in, they were basically told that they had to do a lot of things in excess, a lot of money spent in order to make this site buildable and in order to accommodate all the issues that have been caused by this site across the road. So this company stepped up to bat to do that. And if you want further details on that, David Dennison is here, and he knows more details about it than I could ever imagine. But they're all very, very interesting things about the site and what has gone on. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have appreciate all that has gone into it. It looks like it would be a very pretty development, but I did read some of the traffic impact study that was provided us. And the study was done during, as I read it, they were done between the hours of 7 and 8 a.m. and then 4 to 6 p.m. And the school transportation peak hours are from 6 to 9 a.m., 11:30 to 1, and from 2 to 4:45. We have 2 schools on that street. So the impact studies were not done during.
There's 3 schools.
And soon to be
Oh, I'm
4.
sorry, 3 schools.
And a 4th.
You can tell I'm Southwest looking.
And soon to be 4.
The high school being built above it.
Oh, gosh.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Say that
so
again.
that, and then, so the peak, I mean, I drove over there, I have to drive over there today, I thought, I have the time. It was around 3:40 and there were a lot of buses coming in and out at that time. So that's before this study was started at 4, is that right?
No, not fully.
Not
The
fully.
study, do you wanna handle this?
Sure, yeah, the traffic counts are taken typically all day long. I believe these are 12-hour counts. And then the peak hour is determined based on those counts. So you usually get a 1 to 2 hour window that is the peak hour that's based on those counts.
So the peak was when the actual cars were,
When
but
most
the
of
bus
peak,
transportation peak time
that's not typically
is
factored
not
in.
included. and yet we have lots of children on the buses.
It's the
So
peak
if
hour
we
of
had-
volume of traffic.
Yeah, so the number of children in vehicles and the buses, I mean, we have to think of their safety.
It's definitely not a typical
And,
traffic.
I don't know about that Broad Street. That's not even mentioned in here, of course, the Broad Street intersection. So it's not part of the impact. So it's a disaster right there. Everybody knows it, everybody lives it. I'm not sure,
And the train tracks.
and the train track.
And Haven's Corners and stuff.
So, I'm just throwing that out there for, obviously, we're gonna be tabling this, but I'm just throwing that out there for. That's all.
Thank you.
We're all tired.
I noticed in the public service director's comments was, I believe you mentioned it, Zach, when, we had, drainage in the rear yards, city access,
Yes.
and you had a chance to look at that out,
Yes.
and is that a concern with you?
Yes, basically, there's some storm sewer on the lots, in the rear yards and such, and that's very difficult for the city to maintain. So we'd like to move those, off of lots where possible and out of backyards where possible.
Okay. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be addressed, and if we do keep the cluster, mentality, then there's, approximately 2.5-ish feet on each side between the 10 foot if we have that easement, so, I understand what is going on with the green space for cluster and to what Connie said, but, this is literally the 4th or 5th neighborhood brought up with cluster, and, I understand that that's something that is marketable, but I believe our market is kind of saturated with it right now, so, I do believe you guys need to take a look at, giving a different type of product besides homes right on top of each other, because I can tell you right now, from a lot of the residents I speak with and know, is not popular right now. To grease the wheels, fall in line a little more with the future comprehensive plan, or current zoning.
Sure, when you say the future comprehensive plan, are you referring to the density
Yes,
or the
density.
lot width? The
Yeah,
density.
Density and the lot width. I understand we can do cluster on any zoned area, but doesn't mean we should.
Anything else? No? Okay.
Thank you for the in-depth presentation, I do appreciate that. I've got a few questions. Number one, I didn't see, there is a 4th school being built, and I don't see sidewalks on the Summit Road side. Again, some of these kids probably will be walking to school, and I just wanna make sure that I saw the sidewalks ended and dumped them right into Summit.
I believe we did take that into consideration, after our last meeting, and I believe we are proposing, a sidewalk going from our entrance down. I know there isn't really anything for it to step into, but,
There's not.
I will look into that, because I believe we talked about that, with the landscaping and the mounding there. We relocated the mounding back by the houses, closer to the houses, so, I'll double check that, but I believe we're planning to provide a
Thank you,
sidewalk.
because again, with the new school being built
Absolutely.
north, we know what's gonna be going in those fields heading north, so if we start a sidewalk now, it's like the railroad, you gotta start somewhere, and then everything else will tie together.
We'll take that into consideration.
Second thing is, I'm a little, the 10-acre thing, and I understand, and I think that's great if you guys have, if the school feels that that's a benefit for them, but I don't know why we just don't go ahead and finish that access road now. Just my thought, just speaking out loud, I don't know why we just don't finish that access road to Cleveland. That was one thing, and then you said, and again, I'm just wanna play off of words, you said you agreed with most of the things. What was the non-most, just so we have an idea of what your non-most was?
I think the density was one we would like to ask for the additional, really our density amounts to an additional 11 home sites. Those home sites actually help pay for and offset the cost of, oversizing those basins, of donating the land to the school. So that's one thing that we would like to kind of move forward and keep that density where it's at now, without losing the yield on those home sites. As far as the rest of staff comments, we went through them. We are requesting, of course, the deviation to the open space, to the height of the signage, but we could, work through some of those issues, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And then you said that there would be a left end heading south.
South, yes.
Is there an easement heading north? Because again, once that school is built, all that traffic will be heading up Summit. Is there also a turn in heading north, or is it just straight road?
Go to the site plan. Currently, there is a left turn lane into,
Coming south, what about right turn going north?
not a right turn going north, no, but there's a left turn going into Windward Drive. And then, of course, south, we would come down with the left turn lane as well. We are dedicating additional right-of-way, so I guess at a later date, if the city were to expand that road or widen the road, it's always a possibility. But we are dedicating the additional right-of-way for it.
I just think that whole intersection is going to become another cluster without taking a look at possibly some right turns going into Windward and also right turns going into the new development heading north. Just my thought and comments, that's all. That's all.
Thank you. Again, I'll repeat what I said earlier. A long list of things that still need to be addressed, and it's really beneficial if those are addressed before you come to the hearing, so keep that in mind. But we'd like for you to address those things promptly. I do thank you, compliment you for the work on the drainage and stormwater. That is something that's sorely needed there. I know going back to the three prior proposals for the property, as I recall, the first two, the commission even recommended against approving. The third one, we did recommend approving that because of the drainage improvements, and now you've gone beyond that, so that should help. One question, to clarify, the 10 acres definitely is being transferred to the school district, or is that just offered to them?
We have offered to dedicate that to it if this project moves forward.
But again, it's going to be their property regardless, or, if this is approved?
We don't currently own the property, we're under contract right now, so if we move forward and we purchase the property, yes, we would then dedicate the 10 acres to the school.
And part of the reason I ask that is that in the narrative that you provided, there's a section that says development standards for the school bus sub-area. And under permitted uses, it says single-family detached residential on slabs or with basements. Why would you put that in there?
I think that was just more of a protection to us in case the school does not accept it, so that this is it's included within our PUD, so if the school were not to accept it, we probably need to reword that as more of a contingency plan, if for whatever reason the school backed out of wanting that land.
So essentially, if the school backed out, you would probably come back and want to expand?
We would have to come back, yeah, we would have to come back, absolutely, but if it's more of a contingency, we can look at rewording that or possibly removing that. We'll take another look at that before we come back before you.
I'd be a little concerned that it'd be, bigger development even. At least that's what it looked like. It was a loophole, if you will.
Sure.
For that. Okay, I think that was pretty much my thing. I like the theme.
Thank you.
Something different.
Yes.
And I suppose the most expensive houses in the development will be on the Saffron Court. Saffron's very expensive, so. Anyway.
I like that, yeah. We'll take that into consideration also.
Okay, any other questions, comments for Amanda at this time?
I just want to thank you guys for letting us stand up, give our presentation, and we're also looking forward to hearing public comments. We thank you for allowing us to move forward with that.
Okay, yeah, stand by.
All right, thank you.
Looks like I have 5 speaker request forms. Jerica Zuckerman, Ryan Lammers, Jody Bowen, Susan Holmes, Destiny Coleman. You swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Jerica, first.
I know I have 3 minutes. I'm Jerica Zuckerman. I live at 6368 Summit Road, almost across the street, slightly down. They've touched on a couple things. One, we're not from the subdivision. Most of us are from outlying houses. Our drainage is an issue. The subdivision, whether they corrected that issue or not with their dense housing, our backyards flood. Our streets flood. There's no infrastructure. There's no, drainage. There's no storm drains coming from down there. And what they're proposing is to flatten the land. A lot of that's gonna run off, while some will be caught in their basins. It really doesn't help the surrounding areas. So while I appreciate them saying that they're helping improve the areas, we don't feel like there's much of an improvement. The density of housing, to be honest, I mean, most of us live on a bigger parcel. I have one of the smallest in the area, not the smallest, it's just under an acre. I live surrounded by a beautiful 5-acre farm, and that's pretty much the only reason I bought it. We're talking about taking these 0.46 acre lots, that's the minimum now, and squeezing them into this 0.14, which is absolutely ridiculous to take shoeboxes. I know you guys have all touched on that, and just squeeze them all together. One of my biggest concerns, I feel like that parcel of land is sort of a silent buy-off for the school's silence. We all know there is a massive capacity issue. We're talking about 211 homes that are going to bring us 400 to 800 children, possibly even more. And unless they're proposing to build a building on that parcel without levying the actual residents who are going, I don't see how that's beneficial, other than not having an uproar from the school district itself. That pretty much would be my concerns. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Lyman?
Thank you for not tabling, and by means, I am not opposed at all to a subdivision. I'm opposed to the density, which you guys talked about. I obviously don't have to read zoning code to you, you guys know that, but currently it's R87, 2 acres per house. And what are we talking, 0.4?
1.4.
Less? Future plan, R20, 100-foot frontage, we're talking 50. There's 10 feet between houses. They're talking a 3,000 square foot house. My house is less than 3,000 square feet, I'm on a 5-acre lot. I live north of them on Ashley Lane, sorry, 110 Ashley Lane, Brian Lane, I didn't say that first. I'm also a firefighter. I work inside the city of Columbus. I work in heavy populated, dense areas, fighting a fire in an area where your houses are 10 foot apart or less. People are gonna have a flower bed, they're gonna have a little picket fence, they're gonna have all the pretty things you should have in a beautiful subdivision, well-designed homes. They look great. They're too close. We can't get back there. If I have to carry a 24-foot ladder to the backyard to get it to the bedroom window to get little Johnny out of there when the house is on fire, but I gotta squeeze in this little area, and then you got your hose roller, you got your flower bed, I trip over that, get hurt, can't get the kid out. It's pretty simple. Schools, it's a major problem. We already had an issue, and I'm sure you're all aware of that, with zoning with the school on Summit due to traffic. Now we wanna put 211 homes, let's call it 600 more cars every day up and down Summit, drive in front of South, North, and Central at 7 in the morning. Good luck. They wanted to say property values would increase. I'm gonna argue that.
Yeah.
If you can get 300,000 out of them houses, awesome, I really doubt it. But I'm pretty sure that would lower my property value. I'm real sure of that. You mentioned sidewalks. The 10 acres to the school, when you read the code, you're all aware of it, 12.55.1. That is just a simple, to get the variances, to get their divergence, they have to do it. It's not I'm being nice, I love the schools. I have to give something to get a divergence. That's what the code reads, they gotta do it. I can go on, let's see. Talking about first-time home buyers, we've got a bunch of those. Let's go with nicer homes. That's why people are moving farther away, leaving. The people don't stay in the school district, they don't stay in the school and invest in the property. I've been here for 25 years. I lived on Taylor in a first-time subdivision. I moved to Summit, Ashley Lane, bought 5 acres, built a home I want to stay in for my entire life. But if you start slapping 211 homes in every 40 acres, you know, rainwater, we got a problem. Roads are not, I'll be fast. Pervious surfaces, you guys know the numbers. Rural residential, 15% for the entire area is allowed to be a impervious surface. You're 35% in your other areas, but now you're throwing in more roads, more houses. Those things are impervious, that water's gonna run off, there's gonna be more runoff than there currently is. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Bowen?
Good evening, and I know we're all tired, but we'll get through it. My name is Jody Bowen, 13645 Cleveland. I think I'm T about where the access road's gonna be on Cleveland. I'm a 30-year resident, so I've seen a lot of things happen. Some of these people I've met at previous township meetings back in the day. And my main concern, obviously, as everyone else's, is the density and all the other things that are mentioned. So I'll just start with that. At the time, I lived there prior to the trailer park going in, and my concern was when that did, that the density would be considered acceptable in that area because of the trailer park being allowed to go in. And that was brought up during their presentation, so I'd like to address that. My other concern is that traffic-wise on Cleveland, we are the school road, and we are the bypass to Broad Street. And one of the reasons a turn lane wasn't put in when the trailer park went in was because of right-of-way issues. I don't know what that is at this point. Anymore.
35 feet.
Right, but there was no right-of-way to be able to put in a turn lane into that area. I don't think zoning was properly done when my house was done, because I got like 6 feet from the end of my car to the road right now. So, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. There isn't a lot of right-of-way, so I'm all for zoning, okay, and being done the correct way, so I appreciate all that you do. But I do think that the density is something to be considered. School times, as you mentioned, Ms. Rogers, is if you take Cleveland on both sides between Taylor and Mink, we are all schools. You have everybody coming in from all those areas. Number 2, there's no place for the police to help control speeding and traffic. I have offered my driveway, and they have sat in my driveway more than 3 or 4 times because speeding is ridiculous with the amount of traffic that's on that road.
Thanks for the tip.
So, but, well, I don't know that the police officers were happy about it, but I was. I'll just say
It's
that.
now public record.
But anyway, those are my concerns. And some of the other things that you guys pointed out about the trees not being replaced, those kind of things, obviously that's a concern because more water's gonna lay in that area if those trees are gone and not to absorb the water. So you're already looking at that. I appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you. Susan Holmes?
Hi, I am Susan Holmes. I live at 6334 Summit Road. We have been a resident for over 30 years. I have a letter I was gonna read, but there are so many other issues that the storm drainage, I'd love to know how you think that water goes from this particular site over that subdivision. It doesn't. We were there before that subdivision existed. The entire area was tiled for field tile. What happens across the road doesn't go to the subdivision. That's our backyard, that's pond behind us. When the subdivision came in, they cut all field tiles, they put storm drains in, and it made our drainage basically upside down. So I'd love to see whatever study you guys have that say that it goes under the road, because it doesn't. As far as, Ms. Rogers, you had talked about the times at which the study was done for rush hour. Rush hour starts for us at 6:30. The schools, the buses are already going. It goes to approximately 8 o'clock because everybody is, commuting and all that type of thing. Same thing for the evening rush hour. It starts closer to 2:30. The school and everything that goes on is backed up all the way to Broad Street, which is Route 16, not Broad Street, right across from or adjacent to this. The traffic study, they didn't even look at that as far as what happens down the road. They're giving the school a carrot in what they're calling green space, and they want to count it as part of their green space, but we have no control over what that is going to be, and if the school is going to turn it into pavement to park buses, how does that help green space calculation? I don't know how you can put that in there. That's ridiculous. As far as even the road itself to put a bus terminal on, that's a 35-foot right-of-way. That used to be a donkey path that supported the railroad. It was never a dedicated road to hold that type of traffic. It is hard to get. You go down there with a trailer and a bus, it's hard to just even maneuver. So now you're gonna put more traffic, more buses, a potential school. Who knows what that's gonna be. Right now, the school has buses down the road at the elementary school. So now what you're saying is that they're gonna have to come up if they, develop a school there or whatever. So now you're gonna increase traffic, and it bottles up now. When they closed Mink to do that construction, we had cars at about, where this development starts. It backed up because the buses all have to stop at the railroad crossing for a period of time, open their doors. So that is what is potentially gonna happen when you put 211 homes in. The questions I have also is, we have roads stubbing north and south. Where are they going? What are on the other ends of those developments? You can't tell me that these guys aren't working with the school, giving them carrots, and now they got more plans. And I would like to know what those pieces are. And I'd like an impact study.
You're out of time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Destiny Coleman.
I'll give you my letter.
Hello, I'm Destiny Coleman. I live at 6335 Summit Road Southwest. That's the letter J on your map, so I'm just south of the new development that's being created, or wanting to be created. There is a constant issue of traffic. I think we've addressed this multiple times, but with the addition of these new properties, that could create 500 more cars on the road for us. And so in the mornings, it is absolutely ridiculous to get to Summit Road, or to get to Broad Street from Summit Road. And not only do cars use this road, but also farmers. So there is constantly traffic from tractors on the streets, and the road is narrow. It's not a wide street. So adding additional lanes would be preferable. However, the road is used by literally everyone. And so Summit Road is a constant use of a detour. I don't know if you've noticed, but hydrants are being placed on Summit Road as we speak, which is a wonderful addition to our street. However, it's caused a lot of traffic. And of course, it's caused traffic from Mink Street, from that development on Mink and Cleveland to reconstruct that road. It also caused a detour issue for us as well. So Summit is constantly being used as a detour. And I have lived in the Licking Heights School District since I was 8 years old, so about 20 years. And so the Licking Heights School District, of course, is one of the largest growing school districts in Central Ohio, as you know. So Licking Heights admitted over 4,500 students this year, and we keep growing. However, even though we are going to build a new high school, and it's currently under construction and will be built, by the time it is built, it will reach and be at capacity. There is an option for it to be added an addition, but however, adding these additional homes, these 211 homes that could add 300 to 400 more students, is going to make our schools compacted as they already are. Students are currently in modular homes, and they have to go outside at both our middle school and high schools to learn. Classrooms are being turned into closets. Lunchrooms are being spread into the gymnasiums, and some students don't even have lockers. So adding this development and adding these single-family homes that could be well into the $300,000 for these new first-time home buyers may not be preferable to our school district and the amount of students that we currently are at capacity with. And then also the construction being it right bared up to my property line. We have an alleyway, and there is an access road that actually runs behind our homes. So wondering if that is going to be an option for people to use and to actually be able to come past our property is also a concern. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to address any of the
I'd like to
concerns
address a
or
couple of
further-
things. First of all, the open space calculation does not include the 10 acres. We were explaining. No, it doesn't. The 34.8 or whatever percent is only based on the acreage except for the 10 acres. We mentioned the 10 acres because we're not using it, but we are giving it to the school. And to basically suggest that it's always much easier to think, okay, a developer comes in, and I represent a lot of developers, and there's always that suspicion. There are no time was there ever anything dangled out as a carrot. Been totally open here. I met with Dr. Wagner 3 times, and after numerous times with the school, he said this would really help if you gave it to us. Okay, is that a carrot? No, because Dr. Wagner opposes everything, and so does Licking Heights School Board. They're not supporting this. There's no letter saying they support it. They're very happy about 10 acres. If they don't want it, we don't need to give it to them. There's nothing under the covers here. There's nothing suspicious. We're telling you we offered to give it to them when they asked. So it wasn't something we went to them and said, would you like 10 acres? No. After 2 or 3 times of meeting, he suggested it might be a good idea to consider that because they need a school bus garage. So it is what it is. You can call it a carrot. There's no carrot here. This board has heard it enough. The schools are crowded, and they're not going to support about any development in town. So I guess the other thing I'd like to suggest in the future is, if we come back here, is that we like to work with neighborhoods. We're not here opposed to you. You're here opposed to us. I would ask that you could take down my number. You can tell me. I've heard a lot of things tonight. I know a lot of you don't like densities, but development will happen in Pataskala. And Pataskala and roads, everything, can either sit stagnant, and you can keep the population as is, and you can keep the large lots here and there, but there will be development. And sometimes developers come in and help improve an area.
But all of us said we were in favor of development,
Yeah, ma'am.
just not putting people in shoeboxes. Give us the
If I may
proper
say
guidance.
something, these are not shoe boxes. You prefer large lots, some people do. There are an amazing amount of people who prefer smaller lots with the same size houses. So it's not me against you, it's just a preference of different people. A subdivision developer does not go in. I'm just asking you to be respectful of me as I say something. A developer does not go in and ask for a rezoning and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on this process if they don't believe there's a market for what they're going to sell. A lot of people want to live in Pataskala, and a lot of people do not and cannot afford a 2-acre or 3-acre, 4-acre site. But they can and like living in a subdivision where they have camaraderie, where they have a community. This tonight shows people like communities. People like to be together. They like to support each other. They like to clap after they talk because it makes us together. This community is would like to be a part of your community. You may not like the smaller lots, but if in fact we get it approved, this will become part of your community. Part of the improvements that will happen on Summit will be because a subdivider came in and paid the price. Part of the, there is a pipe under the road at Summit. That wasn't a fake line. It was studied. And what happened is that line that went under Summit Road was actually calculated by the Glenbrook developer to only have to serve 5.5 acres. It wasn't done, and it was probably done at a code that has now been improved. So when we're researching to find out what is causing the Glenbrook issues, which were brought to our attention by the city staff, we understand you may already have had stuff because of tiles. We understand I can't help you, perhaps, but I can say that we're going to help what we can, what prior developers said they couldn't spend the money on. So that's basically our response. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions, Commission? As I mentioned earlier, I think there's an opportunity for the applicant to develop, or to work with staff to address a lot of those questions that were not answered in the application. So I will move that we table application ZON 19003 to allow the applicant time to resolve those issues.
Second.
Thank you, Aaron. Discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Bigerow?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Truex?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan? Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Motion passes, and this will stay on the table. And for those of you who came tonight and made comments, we appreciate that. That's part of the record. You'll be notified again
Okay, well,
when it comes back on for consideration.
sir, will there be discussion, with it being tabled, will there be discussion again the next time?
Yes, there'll be a public hearing. You won't need to repeat what you've done here tonight, but you have another opportunity to comment, yes. And again, like we did before, we'll take a 7-minute and reconvene at 10 p.m.
Thank you.
Application ZON 19001. This is Brian Kessler, Jack Paul, for property at 131 Oak Meadow Drive. Come forward here. Before we go to a staff report, he had a comment or request that he wanted to make to the commission. So,
Okay, I gotta say my name and all that, or, I request this be paid.
okay, that was simple.
Yeah, that's all I gotta do.
Okay.
So moved.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I'm trying to make this clear.
And Dustin seconded.
Dustin
Rick moved and Dustin seconded. In terms of discussion, do you want to say why, or you just asked?
I was getting use variance. We don't really have a used car. We do internet stuff. We go out and purchase vehicles for people that are requesting them. And so all we need is a place to have an office. You know, by law, I have to display a couple cars, but there would be no banners, no numbers on any vehicles, no nothing. The BMV has 2 types of license. They have a all-inclusive license where you can get 1,000,000 cars if you want to put them on, or they have a under 10 cars and under license. That's what we were gonna do. That's what we're gonna get. And so we just really need the office space, because our office hours are 1 to 3 on Friday. Everything else is by appointment only, so we don't really, well, I mean, that's what we have to do, because everything's by appointment. Somebody calls me up and says, I need a 2012 Porsche yellow, we go out and find that vehicle, buy it, bring it back, call them up, they come get it. That's what we do.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
We did have one speaker request form, and is Terry Allen still here?
Well, yes, I am.
Okay. We'll give you that opportunity, even though he's asked for it to be tabled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth, that your slant are under God?
I do.
Thank you. You got the floor.
Okay, I'm Terry Allen, and I live at 63 Highland Hollow. And we have property that sets almost across from this property, and it's a rental property. We have children that live in that property. This property that they're talking about also is right across from a very large apartment complex. So I worry that although they say they're only gonna sell a limited amount, and I know the lot is not huge, any used car dealership that's gonna cause traffic to come in there is not a good thing to have on Oak Meadow Drive when it's got access to the park as well as all the children. There's an apartment across the street that would be next to this property. There's an apartment on the other side and on the side that I own. And I'm really concerned about putting any more traffic on Oak Meadow than there already is from residential properties. I know there is a daycare center, and then there's this vacant lot. And like I said, there's a lot of children in the large apartment complex next to it, or across the street from it. We have children in it. The children that we happen to have in ours are handicapped, and so I worry even more about any additional, in lieu of, there's no sidewalks on the street, or on the streets as well. So I just wanted to come and express my concern about putting any more commercial property on that road, given all the residential that's there, and it's high dense residential, given the apartments that are there, and the access to the park. Putting more traffic on it would concern me, so I wanted to come and say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we do have a motion on the floor to table that application. Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Ripley.
Yes.
Ms. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Bigelow.
Yes.
Mr. McGowan.
Yes.
Mr. Truax.
Yes.
Mr. Boggs.
Yes,
Mr. Epperson.
Yes.
that motion passes. Okay. All right, next on the agenda is final plan amendment FP 19-001, it's Westport Homes. And you're gonna give a quick overview, right?
Yeah, in the interest of time, we'll make this quick. Like you said, this is the final plan amendment for Broadmoor Commons phases 2 and 3. Quick zoning history, it was rezoned to plan development in 99, that plan expired. Applicant came back with a preliminary plan May 4th, 2016. Phase 1 was approved January 4th, 2017, and the final plan for phase 2 and 3 was approved May 3rd, 2017. However, remember back some months ago, we had the final plan amendment for phase 1. The reason for that was taking those trees that were originally out of the right-of-way, moving them back into the right-of-way, and granting an divergence for them to place the street trees at 50 feet spacing instead of at 30. So essentially what they're doing here is the same thing. Trees are now back in the right-of-way, and they're spaced at 50 feet instead of 30. Another thing that they've also done with this is we've also, remember that we've had like an ongoing discussion for a pedestrian path. So what they did here was they're proposing to remove the trees from the reserve in phase 2 and 3 and instead use the money that would have gone to put those trees in to take that to build a path in phase 5. So you can see here's the original plan with all of the street trees that wouldn't actually be street trees, they'd be spaced throughout the lots, and some replacement trees up here in the reserve. And here's what they propose now. You can see the street trees are spaced further apart, and there will be no replacement trees in the reserve here. So as for modifications for this, so 1, the applicant shall address all comments for the planning and zoning staff. 2, the applicant shall provide acceptable growth habitat and application for the Boulevard American Linden. That was the only tree that wasn't previously approved or on the approved street tree planting list. Just need some information to make sure that that is acceptable for what tree lot size is there. And 3, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall approve variances for the following. 1283.05A to allow for the spacing of street trees at 50 feet instead of 30 feet, and 1283.022 to allow for a path in phase 5 to be installed in lieu of the replacement trees in phase 2 and 3. Any questions?
Any questions for Jack? No? Okay, Terry, your turn. And if you tell me you've got an hour presentation, I'm gonna.
3 minutes.
Take whatever time you need. Do you swear that any testimony that we give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name's Terry Andrews. I'm with Westport Home, address 507 Executive Campus Drive, Suite 100, Westerville. I just wanted to show you quickly, and I don't know if you have anything to put up. I guess I'm trying to show where the path is going to be. We talked about it before.
We do have that in the next, since
Oh,
they were done as
okay.
2 separate applications, one
Okay.
for phase 2 and 3, and one's for phase 5. We do have the path in the next
Okay.
application.
I just wanted to
phase
show
5.
that to you, because I didn't see it on this rendition, so. But that's all I had. I just wanted to talk about the path, so.
Okay.
We're excited about doing that. That would be a nice amenity for the neighborhood.
All right, don't go away. Comments or questions from commission members on this application? Rob, you could start with you. No? Britt? Anyone? Ann? Darren? Dustin?
This will draw it in line with phase 1, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right. I guess if there are no questions or comments on that, we're prepared to act on this tonight?
I think there's some
Oh,
folks who
I'm
might
sorry.
like-
Someone?
No, we like the 50 feet instead of 30, so. We live there, so.
Okay. We need a motion.
I'll move that we approve application number FP-19-01 pursuant to section 1225.13 of TASPA code. With the following modifications, 1 through 3.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Second. And seconded? Rob seconded. To approve with the 3 modifications listed in the staff report. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call?
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Mr. Becerril?
Yes.
Motion is approved and shows the application. Next item on the agenda is final plan amendment FP 19002, also for the same development.
I guess for this, ditto what I just said for the previous one. They're moving the trees into the right-of-way at 50-foot spacing, and they're also doing the path. But with this, they did remove some replacement trees in order to cover the cost of the path. Here's the original plan. Here's what's being proposed. You can see the path here, coming down around the detention basin up here. It actually comes down to the south and around and connects to the west. There'll also be a little part coming here over into the future phase. You can see here, we're also getting a 20-foot wide easement to the south. In case of any time that the property to the south develops, then the city will have the ability to come in and finish that path connection. And got some modifications here for you. 1, shall address all comments from planning and zoning staff. 2, planning and zoning commission shall grant divergences from 1283.05A for the tree spacing and 1283.022 for the path to be used in lieu of the tree replacement. Any questions?
Any questions for staff on this?
Maintenance for the path and repair, is that the city or the HOA?
That would be, for this, it's all gonna be in an easement with the city, so that'll be city maintenance and repair, but the goal is, if we wanna have a interconnecting path system, we can't have an HOA path jump to the other HOA path. So we've talked with the Parks Director to say, feedback we're getting from our comprehensive plan is people really like these. Do you have a problem if we start to do this? He says, I think it's great, I'd love to see that. So the city has established it that it'll be that crushed limestone for now. The city would maintain it with that. If it goes to the south, the city would build that path. So in order to do an interconnected path system, it has to be under the ownership of the city. So long story short, it would be through the city, but talking to the other city departments, they're really behind doing this.
Okay, and, is there any requirements for lighting or any specifications for that?
There would be no lighting on the path at this time. If later the city wanted to go back in, we have that 20-foot wide easement, the city could install lighting on the path if they chose to.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for staff? If you would, Jack, go back to the map where you had the red and blue, red and green, yeah, that one. Just to clarify, the red is what would be actually built, the green is just an easement that may be built in the future, or would be if there's something to connect to later.
That's correct.
All right. Terry, it's your opportunity.
I'll be happy to answer any questions. One thing they didn't know, we're gonna actually do where there's a wetland that we have to cross. We're gonna do like a boardwalk, which will be a nice amenity too, I believe, so. I think that shows up, yeah, there it is, right there, so. But that'll all go in when we do phase 5, which we hope to do this summer, so.
Okay. Any questions for Terry? No? And if not, I'll entertain a motion if we're ready for action.
I'll make a motion, we approve the amended final plan for application FP-19-02 pursuant to section 1255-13 of the Pataskala Code with the following modifications. 1 through 3.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the application with the 2 modifications listed in the staff report. And Rip has seconded, thank you. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Mr. Beggerow?
Yes.
That motion passes and the application is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for your patience.
Thank you, ladies, for waiting it out. We appreciate it.
We're just curious since we live there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, Code Amendment ZON 19002.
I'll
From
be
the
turning
city.
it over to Scott.
Okay.
Go easy on me.
So, everyone have a nice evening.
Ready?
He's the youngest one in the room. Right.
He's my ride.
Somebody's walking in the snow.
There you go. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, so the applicant, City Pataskala, it would be citywide, and the request was amend section 1315 unsafe structures of the Pataskala Code pursuant to 121710 of the Pataskala Code. So, in section 1315, it talks about unsafe structures. So currently there's a discrepancy in the time allotted to demolish a building in that section. I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we amended our demolition, or added a section about demolition to actually provide regulations. It gives folks 90 days. There's a provision in this section that says 60. We didn't know about this section until maybe earlier this year when we were looking through something. So it was like, oh, I had no idea this was here. It's not in the zoning code, so we didn't even know it was there. So we found that this year. We took it to development committee. They said we need some provisions for emergency demolitions, that if this is gonna come down and it's unsafe, we need provisions to make sure we can expedite the process and not leave it completely up to the homeowner or the property owner if they're dragging their feet. And then it uses the term landowner and owner interchangeably throughout, so I just made everything owner so it's consistent and it doesn't go back and forth. So as I mentioned, demolition permit good for 90 days. This one section indicates only 60. Everything's gonna align within this code itself and then with the demolition regulations. Mentioned the owner and landowner, mentioned the development committee wants provisions for emergency demolitions. Essentially what would happen, we identify a property as this is an emergency. We wanted to make it a council decision instead of just somebody, city administrator or myself. We're not building inspectors. I mean, if you look at something that's leaning like this, yeah, it's probably gonna come down, but for some of the nuanced things, we didn't want staff to have to make a decision that the guy comes back, where'd my house go? It's gone. What ability do you have to determine this was an imminent danger? So, yeah, so we didn't wanna get into an issue with that, so we wanted to go council. So it won't be instantaneous, but every 2 weeks, it could be on the agenda that we can get moving and, you know, and get the emergency moving along. No one else commented on it, no modifications. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions? We'll just kind of open it up in general.
You'd be pleased to know that my dog chose to eat a good portion of your.
We gotta stop putting meat on this. I've been telling Jack, like, you can't do this.
Somebody was eating
Why
bacon when they were
does it smell
stapling
like
them in.
hamburger? But it was so big, we had to get trash bags because it was supposed to snow, and then we wanted to make sure that you guys knew, it's like, there's gonna be a trash bag on your front porch, and here's why. Although they were scented, so.
I noticed that,
You're
you tried to
welcome.
make it all.
For once, I was unhappy that I actually picked mine up. I missed out on the scented
You,
bag.
Although
I
it's
read mine
interesting-
before Fido did his job.
Well, we had those trash bags in my daughter's when she was little in the diaper bin. So that smell, whenever I smell it, always reminds me of those two smells mixed. So it was like, it wasn't pleasant for me because it brought back memories. So it was like.
It looked good before.
Okay, any discussion on the application? It seems to make sense.
Yes, it does.
If there is none, I'll move that, oh, well, this goes to council, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
I'll move that we recommend approval of, application, lost it. There we go, ZON-1902.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarelle?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Motion passes. Finally, finished with the new business section. No other business listed, so we'll move to number 7, approval of the minutes for the February 6, 2019 regular meeting. Anybody, or well, has everybody reviewed those minutes? Are there any additions or corrections?
No.
Good. I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 6, 2019 meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarelle?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes,
Mr. McGowan? Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
that motion passes. Guess what?
I'll move we adjourn to Wednesday, April 3rd.
Second.
Thank you, Rick.
We get paid overtime.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarelle?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Truax?
Truax.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes and we're adjourned.